Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 regular closed session meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. Directors April Chan and William B. Patterson are absent and excused. Director Andy Katz is participating remotely. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Gomez,
Here.
Director Katz,
Present.
Director Lenny,
Here?
Director Young,
Here.
President McIntosh.
Here. All right. If members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard now. Comments on agenda items will be heard when the item is up for consideration. Madam Secretary, are there any public comments online?
We have one hand for public comment, Yvette Rivera.
All right, and I have no blue cards for public comment here in the audience. So let's go to Ms. Rivera.
Yvette, you should be able to unmute your mic and give me a moment. I'm going to set the timer for you so that you can see it. And your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. This afternoon, you're going to vote on getting an independent investigator to prepare a report on the findings of an investigation of alleged violations by former Director John Coleman of Policy 6.04 Ethics of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors, the Political Reform Act and Government Code Section 1090, for presentation and discussion at the June 25th, 2024 board meeting. It's obvious to me that General Counsel's office and the General Manager want to steer the majority of the Board of Directors to go along with retaliating against John Coleman. Again, this is my personal opinion. Also, it's obvious to me that General Counsel and General Manager want to send a message to all board members that will be on the board going forward after 2024 on how they are expected to behave for the remainder of their careers. It's disappointing that there aren't findings or reports on the findings of what Jan Duffy came up with in regards to Craig Spencer and Laura Acosta spending public funds on a private attorney that Craig Spencer hired, or a report on the findings of other investigations that led to lawsuits where there were settlements. I have asked under the Public Records Act request for documents related to the John Coleman investigation that are going to be brought forth publicly at a future board meeting. The documents that I'm asking for are not the findings that the district came up with, because I have been subjected to findings from the district that I didn't agree with. And other people also have been subjected to findings by the district that they didn't agree with. That's the reason why my public records request related to John Coleman is for the documents that the district selectively chose when they came up with their findings. Again, I'll be speaking this afternoon for that board agenda and in the public section portion of the board meeting. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera. Are there any other online speakers? No?
No.
All right, then the board will now convene to conference room 8 to discuss closed session agenda item number 1 and is scheduled to return here for our regular meeting at 1:15. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 regular business meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. Announcements and reports from this morning's planning and Leg HR committees will be heard under item 22. Roll call, Madam Secretary, and Director Chan is absent and excused, and Director Andy Katz is participating remotely. Roll call, please.
Director Gomez?
Here.
Director Katz?
Here.
Director Lenny?
Here.
Director Patterson?
Present.
Director Young?
Here.
President McIntosh?
Here, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we now have a presentation, and I will turn this over to our General Manager, Clifford Chan.
Thank you, President McIntosh. So the district has a strategic goal of creating an environment that attracts, retains, and engages a high-performing, diverse workforce. This includes growing our own by providing educational support, resources, and programs that create career mobility and promotional opportunities. Today, we're excited to celebrate the 13 district employees who completed the EBMUD's third Peralta College Cohort Learning Program. Each of these students attended class one night a week for the last 2 years. The classes were attended in person, virtually, and sometimes in a hybrid format. The cohort is a partnership between the district and Laney College, which brings college courses to district employees to support their career development and mobility goals. Their dedication to education and perseverance throughout the program is inspiring. What they did was not easy. These employees had to juggle their full-time work, family, and other commitments while they successfully completed all the requirements of the program. We all, including the Board of Directors, I know, have encouraged them to, and we will encourage them to continue to pursue their formal education and take advantage of the resources the district has to offer. We're proud of the accomplishments of the employees from cohort number 3, and I do want to list just the names of all the individuals. We have Austin Brills, Neil Brown, Rosalind Kamick, Furman Cazares Jr., sorry if I got that wrong, Thomas Christopher, Ia Ferdinand, Dominic Giovanetti, Adrian Gonzalez, Margaret Langry, Antonio Murillo, Cess Rosalini, Leonardo Sandoval, James Fiam, and Christopher Tran. And the class valedictorian is Ina, and she has some remarks to share on behalf of the class.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Board, everyone visiting. We just like to take a moment to thank you for providing us with this opportunity of advancement, of having the resources, of getting to know different departments, of having an opportunity to learn different things, and to be given a new sense of hope and a new sense of light. It's so hard in this world right now to have opportunities come that you don't have to pay for, and all you have to do is show up and give yourself an opportunity to learn and to meet the wonderful people that I learned that I would have probably never met. And it's just, we're just thankful, you know, as a single mother and working day to day, you know, life, you know, sometimes gets past us and we forget about ourselves. We are givers, we are nurturers, we, you know, are constantly, you know, trying to just make it through the day with the different things and challenges that come about. And it's just nice to have an opportunity to be selfless and to have an opportunity to learn about things that excite me and to have a new light of things that, you know, I can find out about, and that EBMUD is a bigger umbrella than the department that I work in. One of the things that I've also done in addition to the cohort program is I've been taking classes in addition to the cohort classes. I've been taking general ed classes. So I've decided to return to school. So I've taken 4 classes in addition to the 1 class. I have 4 classes this summer, and then I'll be transferring to a UC. So EBMUD has also approved my tuition reimbursement to make that possible. So now every time I go somewhere and I give everyone the good news, they tell me to keep going, keep going, keep going. And that's one thing I want to tell everybody is that it's never too late. You know, you can always learn. Learning makes you feel youthful. It makes you alive. I feel good. You know, when I go outside, I think my energy is contagious. And we're just excited that you were the visionaries to approve this for us. You know, if it wasn't for you understanding what's needed in this type of world, what's going on, taking away from the negativity and allowing us to have something of positivity to come and look forward to every week, then it wouldn't be as great as I think it is. I think every company should have that as an option, and we just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Can everybody stand that was in the cohort
Class.
that's here?
And while the photo is being taken, I want to again congratulate the cohort and let the board know if you are available between 4 and 6 o'clock this afternoon, there's going to be a celebration in the training room for this cohort.
Okay.
Gets a bunch in more. Please come forward and then come on, Laura. You can get in front of Director Luz, the farthest out I can get, or Dr. Gomez, excuse me. Okay, there we go. One, two. Thank you.
And before all of you leave, I'd like to say, on behalf of this board of directors, we are so very proud of you. And thank you for participating in programs like this. I mean, it just makes us all better. And so, thank you and congratulations on graduating. And thank you for being the valedictorian. You are wonderful, outstanding. Thank you all. See, normally we clear the room after that. You don't have to stay and hear the other stuff, but please feel free. All right, that moves us on to announcements from closed session. There are no announcements required from closed session, which moves us on to public comment. Now, Risha, I have public comment only for item 19.
Correct.
I don't have public comment for any other agenda item.
I have one hand at the moment online for public comment. I can check to see if
All
it's
right,
non-agenda or
please.
agenda. Yvette Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic. Is this an agenda or non-agenda item?
One non-agenda item, or I'm going to speak at the public portion of the meeting, and then for number 20.
All right, so you want to speak now, Ms. Rivera, and on 19, number 20?
When number 20 comes up.
Okay. All right, so let's get you on for
Recording stopped.
now.
Recording in progress.
That was me, Dana.
All right, so this is a non-agenda item. All right, we're ready.
Just one moment. Your 3 minutes have started.
Thank you. When I say that this is a non-agenda item, it's because I want to just talk about a CPRA request that I made recently. And I want to clarify the CPRA Act request publicly because I want to make sure that when I get the documents, it's related to evidence that was provided for an investigation. The investigation has already concluded, and it is in regards to agenda item number 20. But again, my public comments are in reference to my CPRA Act request. And my request is for the documents that were used by, I'm assuming, general counsel's office or an investigator to conclude that Mr. John Coleman potentially violated East Bay MUD's Board of Directors ethics policy.
Yvette, that's
I'm
for,
ask-
that's for
Oh,
item
I'm a-
20.
I'm clarifying my CPRA Act request. That's what my public comments are about. May I finish?
Well, yeah, but
So-
we don't want you bleeding into item 20. That's the whole point. So
Okay,
if you
well,
can refrain from referring to item 20, you're great.
okay, again, regarding my CPRA Act request, I do not want a report on any findings. All I want, when I made my public records request, I wanted on documents that were used to come up with the findings.
Gotcha.
And I'm gonna conclude by saying that on when the agenda is posted and when reports are provided to the board, and they say that they're going to make when general counsel's office says that they're going to make an oral presentation, it would be great if at least there was a document that maybe an agenda for that oral presentation. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. We will now move to the consent calendar to consider items 1 through 10.4.
10.3.
10.3?
And President McIntosh?
Yes, sir.
Just one quick clarification. So before you consider the consent items, I just want you to be aware that the consent calendar items 10.2 and 10.4 are the same. However, the BD1 is correct. The item should read, adopt a resolution requesting the Board of Supervisors in Alameda and Contra Costa counties consolidate East Bay MUD's election for the office of director with the November 5th, 2024 statewide general election.
All right. Everyone got it?
Yeah, I'll move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second for the consent calendar. Are there any questions, comments, thoughts, discussion? All right, hearing none.
Roll call
Let's have a
vote.
roll call vote.
Director Gomez,
Yes.
Director Katz. Director Lenny,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President McIntosh.
Yes. Are there any comments from the public on any of these items? We didn't hear any, correct?
No.
All right. That gets us through the consent calendar on to item 11. This is a public hearing to consider revisions to the water and wastewater system schedules of rates and charges, capacity charges, and other fees recommended in the biennial report and recommendation of the general manager for fiscal years 2024 and 2025. The public hearing is now open. We will receive a presentation from Principal Management Analyst Phoebe Grow, and then on to public comment. Good afternoon.
Hello.
And just for reference purposes, we have heard this information on May 14th. We had the report and recommendation. On May 28th, we had a mid-cycle budget workshop, and then today, the public hearing.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's a review of the calendar. Thank you, Director McIntosh. That's also presented here. So we filed the report, our report and recommendation of the general manager for revisions to the water and wastewater system schedule, rates and charges, capacity charges, other fees not subject to Prop 218, and regulations, and this is for FY '25. And then you would have heard some details about this presented at the May 28th mid-cycle budget workshop. And here we are, June 11th, holding our public hearing and considering the adoption of these non-Prop 218 rates, charges, capacity charges, and other fees. Just a note, there is another rates-related item coming up on board agendas, and we have another public hearing on July 9th, and that is for the FY '25 wet weather facilities charge collection on the property tax bill. Those are charges that you approved last year as part of the Prop 218 process, but we do a public hearing every year to collect those on the property tax rolls. So this is the list of the water side rates and charges that are part of this adoption here. And those include the system capacity charges, which, as was noted in the budget workshop, unusually went down this year for related to mostly the cost index that we use for updating those. And then we have also, as part of this package of non-Prop 218 rates, the Public Records Act fee schedule, real property use application fees, the recreation use fees, and all of the non-Prop 218 wastewater schedules. So that would be C through H on the wastewater side. We also have a couple updates to our water service regulations. Section 1, explanation of terms used in those regulations. That was just adding a definition for renovation. And Section 29, water use restrictions related to restrictions on potable water use on ornamental turf. And so quickly we get to our recommended action. Somehow the formatting looks a little strange on here, but we want to adopt the revised water system and wastewater system rates, charges, and other fees not subject to Prop 218, and the revised regulations that are also contained within that same report. Any questions?
Any questions? No, I think we've had a lot of information on this item. And do we have a motion if there's,
But before we take action on this item, you do need to have a motion to close the public hearing.
do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Oh, comment and then comments first.
We
President.
don't have comment, right, Risha?
Right, we have no one online for comment and no one in the audience, so we can motion to close the public hearing.
So do we have a motion?
I think Bill just moved it.
Okay, all right. We have a motion from Vice President Patterson and a second from Director Lenny to close the public meeting. All in favor?
No, we have a roll call vote.
Roll call.
Get out of that habit.
Director Gomez,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Lenny,
Yes.
Director Patterson.
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President McIntosh.
Yes. All right. And no public comment, so the public hearing is closed and we'll move on to item number 12. And item number 12 is determination and discussion to consider the related action.
And that was what Phoebe just had listed on the slide. So that's to adopt the revised water system and wastewater system rates, charges, and other fees not subject to Proposition 218, and the revised regulations recommended in the report and recommendation of the general manager for revisions to the water and wastewater system schedule, rates and charges, capacity charges, and other fees not subject to Proposition 218, and regulations for fiscal year 2025, filed with the board on May 14th, 2024.
I will move the recommended action as read by General Manager Chan, so as
can
not to
second
repeat
that.
it again.
Do you need him to repeat it again?
No, I said
okay.
as read by
All right.
General Manager Chan.
All right, we have a motion
And
by
as printed
Director,
in the
by
slide.
Director Young and a second by Director Gomez. Voice vote,
Roll call vote.
roll call,
Director Gomez,
and voice.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Lenny,
Yes.
Director Patterson.
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President McIntosh.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on. Next item is to affirm the fiscal year 2025 operating debt service and capital budgets for the water and wastewater systems as recommended in the fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025 mid-cycle budget update submitted to the Board of Directors on May 28th, 2024. The fiscal year 2025 budget is unchanged from the amounts adopted by the board on June 13th, 2023.
Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts? Do we have a motion?
I can move it.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice President Patterson, second by Director Gomez.
Yeah,
I
opposite.
moved it.
Is it
Move and
opposite?
second,
Yeah.
yes.
Roll call vote?
Director Gomez,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Lenny,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President McIntosh.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. Next is to approve the mid-cycle position resolution for fiscal year 2025 to implement necessary classification changes as recommended in the fiscal year 2025 mid-cycle budget update submitted to the Board of Directors on May 28th, 2024.
All right. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Young, a second by Director Lenny.
Director Gomez,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Lenny,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President McIntosh.
Yes.
Thank you. Just moving right along. Next is to file the report and recommendation of the general manager to transfer unpaid liens for delinquent charges to Alameda and Contra Costa Counties 2024 and 2025 property tax rolls.
Questions, comments, thoughts?
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion from Director Lenny, a second from Director Young. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Gomez,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Yes.
Director Patterson.
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President McIntosh.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Unanimous as well.
We are now off all the budget items. Next is the appointment of the Facilities Maintenance and Construction Manager. I'm pleased to bring to you for your consideration the appointment of Sharon Hu as our next Manager of Facilities Maintenance and Construction. Sharon has worked at the district for over 20 years. She began her career in the engineering department, where she collaborated closely with district staff on capital projects to improve the reliability of our facilities. Sharon managed our arc flash program, a critical part of our electrical safety program. Most recently, Sharon served as a senior electrical engineer in the plant engineering support section within the operations and maintenance department, supporting facilities operations and maintenance and arc flash assessments. Sharon has a bachelor's degree from the University of California at Davis in electrical engineering and is a registered professional engineer in the state of California. Sharon lives in Alameda and in her spare time enjoys watching her daughters play soccer. Sharon is in the room.
Yes. So Sharon, come on up.
Don't we have to vote first?
Yes, we're on her way.
This is not necessarily a done deal.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move.
Were you a second?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion by Director Lenny, a second by Vice President Patterson. Roll call.
Director Gomez,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Lenny,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President McIntosh.
Yes. All right, congratulations.
Now it's a done deal.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, President McIntosh and members of the board. It's a pleasure to meet you, and it's a pleasure to work for the district for the last 20 years. I'm very honored and very excited to be the lead for for Facilities FMC Division, and I look forward to working there, or in that position. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Moving right along. Next, we have Kathy Viatella to provide the legislative update.
And we did vote to support this morning in our Leg-HR committee.
Yes, you did. So, good afternoon, President McIntosh, members of the board. I am here to present a staff recommendation for board action, which, as President McIntosh pointed out this morning in Leg-HR, they voted to approve the action. And the action is basically to support a position where the district would support or sponsor legislation that would modernize the MUD Act's repayment provisions to conform with existing law. So currently, the MUD Act allows staff to grant an extension for a repayment period not to exceed 12 months for certain customers who are late on their bill payments and request flexibility. So we're proposing a minor change or an amendment to the MUD Act that would grant the district that flexibility to extend the repayment period beyond 12 months should a customer have an undue hardship. And this would align with the existing law that's contained in the Water Shutoff Protection Act that was enacted by SB 998 by Senator Dodd in 2018. And that law applies to covered water systems and grants longer payment periods if a customer is experiencing an undue hardship and based on the individual circumstances of the customer's case. I want to correct something I said in Leg-HR committee this morning to make sure the record is clear. So the language that staff is proposing would be permissive. So for East Bay MUD or any of the other municipal districts under the MUD Act.
Not required.
So not required. So if they wanted to continue doing the normal 12-month repayment period, they could do that. So that's an important clarification. So the language we're proposing wouldn't affect that. So as I said, Leg-HR committee this morning approved the staff recommendation, and we are working right now on finding a legislative vehicle. We'd like to try to do something, if possible, this year. So that completes my presentation, and it's to you now for action, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So yeah, thank you for your presentation this morning and for clarifying that piece. And just the other question that had come up was whether anybody would be charging interest on those late payments over a 12 or 24-month period of time. And my understanding is that we wouldn't be. So
That's
just wanted to
correct.
clarify that as well, or put it out there. So thank you for that.
All right. Is that a motion?
I move.
I have just one question. So right now, there isn't this is language that's agreed upon by the various, there aren't very many MUDs.
No, they're fine.
Basically, there's a consensus among them
Yes.
to do this conformance.
Yes, we have, staff in our customer assistance program had reached out to the other MUDs. They're in support of the proposal, and we're currently now working on trying to find a vehicle.
So my recollection from this morning is that there are only 5.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we have Sacramento on board,
Yes, SMUD is on board.
but not the others. They
So-
haven't commented one way or
Yeah, they
another.
haven't commented one way or the other, so there's not
Okay.
an issue, correct. But we
They
have,
don't
staff
have
have
to do
reached
it,
out to
so-
it,
All
correct,
right.
since it's permissive, correct.
I'd be happy to move the item.
I will second.
All right. We have a motion by Director Gomez and a second by Director Young. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Gomez,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Yes.
Director Patterson has left the room, Director Young. Yes. President McIntosh.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I just have a couple of legislative updates on issues that are of interest to the district. I just wanted to notify you that AB 460, the interim relief bill by Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, we have lifted our opposition. Our concerns have been addressed. The bill was amended last week. It's now really a bill focused on penalties, increased penalties for violations of curtailment orders or cease and desist orders. We will be bringing this back to you at the June 25th board meeting for a position, for a support position. And at that time, I'll provide an update on the water rights legislation generally. Secondly, SB 1255 by Senator Durazo. Last week, that bill was also amended to create a statewide low-income rate assistance program. Language was amended into SB 1255, and the bill is now in print. And the language supports the concept that I brought up at the last board meeting. And just to remind you, in sum, the bill would require water systems to offer rate assistance to low-income ratepayers funded by a voluntary contribution to be placed on certain customer bills. We are planning also to bring this back to the board on June 25th for a position. So any questions on either of those?
Well, June 25th, we don't have a ledge HR committee meeting, so you're just bringing it back to the full board?
Yes, that is the intent. We'll bring it back to the full board.
I am very happy to see progress on this legislation. It's been, I think the bill was first passed to do the study
Correct.
in the
AB
my
401.
first year of service on the board. So this has been cooking for quite a long time. So I'm fingers crossed that we have language that we're supportive of, and so it's very good news.
Yes. All right, and then I just wanted to provide an update on the climate bond. Discussions really are continuing around a climate bond, and time is running out because they have to pull together an agreement by the end of this month. The governor's office still has not weighed in to kind of green light a climate bond or state his priorities. And the discussions and negotiations are behind closed doors at the moment, so there's not a lot of transparency. Politico, a couple weeks ago, they basically leaked what are some of the priorities that would be in a potential climate bond, and we learned that the Assembly is considering three versions, a $6 billion, an $8 billion, and a $10 billion bond, while the Senate is considering a $6.8 billion and a $9 billion bond. There's intense jockeying, I think, among interest groups with competing priorities. And according to the article, some of the potential sticking points are funding for offshore wind, including port infrastructure to enable offshore wind, hydrogen, as well as extreme heat. So those are some of the more kind of contentious issues that they're trying to hammer out with people on different sides. Some of what is proposed that we can glean from the information that was in that article that would benefit the district includes funding for water recycling, for water quality, treatment for hexavalent chrome and PFAS, water conservation, dam safety, flood protection in the Delta, fish and wildlife habitat restoration, wildfire and forest resilience, coastal resilience, including flood protection and zero-emission vehicles. But like I said, this is all in flux. It's probably tied into negotiations around the budgets and the cuts they're having to make. And so I can't make any promises, nor do I know, how much is being committed. So I'm happy to continue to provide updates at the next board meeting. And that completes my update today.
When do they have, what's their deadline?
I think, well, they have to decide on what's going to be on the ballot by June 27th. So the clock is really ticking, and they need to really finish it up in the next couple of weeks.
And do you have any word about, this is not on the bonds, well, it kind of is, or it's about taxes. Do we have any word on any intel, tea leaves on the court's decision on I'm not going to call it what they call it, the proposition that would dramatically change
How we assess fees.
taxes?
Yes. No, we don't have any indication. We heard that the courts would rule by the end of this month, and we don't know.
I think,
where
yeah,
will
I think
come
they
down.
have to rule by the 27th.
Yes, in order for, yeah.
Same date.
And they don't have to rule necessarily, but they probably would. I would suspect they
Right.
would not want to tip it one way or the other, but it just remains to be seen. And there's a lot happening right now in terms of what's on the ballot, a lot of negotiations about what they want to get off the ballot. to have a cleaner ballot because it's very crowded at the moment. So we could see a lot of changes in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you.
All right, see you next board meeting.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, we'll conduct the second reading to amend the East Bay Mud Retirement Ordinance, and Assistant General Counsel Lourdes Matthew will lead this discussion.
Good afternoon, Board. Yes, please, thank you. So today, next slide, please, Risha. We have really two items in our to-do list. It's to conduct the second reading of the amendments to the retirement ordinance and then to vote to adopt the ordinance amending the retirement ordinance. Next slide, please.
My prayer from last meeting extends to this meeting.
Thank you, same here. At the last meeting, Director Young had asked whether, and I'm going to jump just ahead, and we don't need to jump in terms of the slides, but when I was discussing amendments to exclude district retirees from membership if they return as directors, Director Young, you had asked a question whether there were any clarifications that we needed to make in the definitions. And so I just wanted to put up the definitions, and I think we're okay given what the definitions are. So the changes that we're making to the definitions are to the definition of employee and to sever, any commingling of service as an employee and director. We are giving the term director its own definition. And so we're removing it from the definition of employee and adding to the definition a separate definition of director, just to ensure distinction between those two types of members. So that's the first amendment. And then next slide, please. And then the second before you is addition of language to amend to ensure that district retirees are able to serve as board members without loss of receiving their pension allowance. And so we added that language. And just to confirm Director Gomez's comments from last time, we did ensure that this applied to directors who first were elected or appointed to serve on or after the effective date of these amendments. Okay.
All right.
Next slide. This is a big one, but really there's a lot of language from the prior defining terminal compensation. And again, this amendment has to do with limiting the amount of terminal compensation that can be applied to a director's retirement allowance. And if we can move to the next slide. And so with the added language and the bold and underlined, we're doing just that. And so anyone who is elected or appointed to become a director on or after July 15th, 2024, their highest average annual compensation should be based on the compensation they earned as a director. Okay, next slide, please, Risha. And then the third major kind of class of members that we wanted to address were those who earn service credit and pension rights as an employee, and then they become a director without first retiring. So to accomplish that, the first amendment we needed to make was, again, to the definitions section and to clarify that for an elected or appointed director who first performed services as a member of the retirement system as a director, that the term district service performed as an employee shall not be combined with district service performed as a director. So that helps establish clear severance of the two types of service. Next slide, please. And then we also need to make necessary amendments to the provisions in the retirement ordinance that grant the right to commingle services when an employee leaves district and then returns. And so in that situation, when a district employee leaves service and then returns as a board member, these additions clearly separate those two types of services and do not allow for those two periods of service to
to commingle. I'm sorry, can we go back one more? That's okay. You too want to get through this presentation. Okay, yes. So next slide after that. And then, so this is also as part of that, and to clearly state that as with other directors, that the terminal compensation of a future director who may have earned service credit as an employee, that their highest, that their terminal comp shall be made on the highest compensation they received as a director. Okay? Next slide, please. And then finally, we wanted to ensure separate accrual of HIB as well. And this section that's on the slide right now is going to be added to the section regarding the health insurance benefits to clearly state that HIB service accrued as an employee for purposes of determining HIB eligibility and service accrued as a director shall be treated separately, and that the 2 periods of service shall not exceed 100%. So if an employee works for 20 years and then becomes a board member, works for another 20 years, they do not get 200%. They are only entitled to 100% maximum. Next slide, please. Okay, so are there any questions on the amendments?
Well done.
Thank you.
I will move the item gladly.
Thank you.
Finally, huh? Luz, I saw you
Would this
love
be
to
the
say,
right
I
time?
just have one.
So the ordinance takes effect on this slide. It says July 12th.
Yes,
but
and I did
everywhere
that
else-
on purpose.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Because,
so I was-
and in the retirement ordinance, that's going to take effect, it says July 15th. So the 31st day, so the ordinance takes effect no earlier than the 31st day after its enactment. That falls on July 12th, which is a Friday. And so the amendments then would truly take effect for purposes of applying the retirement ordinance on the 15th, which is the Monday.
Following Monday.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yes.
So I'll second your motion.
Anything further? Questions, comments? All right, we have a motion by Director Young. We have a second by Director Gomez.
I have one hand.
One hand for public comment. All right.
iPad 4, you should be able to unmute your mic.
I have been able to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Lana Coleman, and I was listening. I understand it talks about directors after July 2024. Is there anything I missed in this that impacts somebody who hasn't retired by July 2024 and I missed it? I just want to understand whether that's in there somewhere, and I didn't understand it.
So this,
I have a second question to follow, but I'll let you answer that one first.
yeah, so this applies to directors who are elected or appointed on or after July 15th, 2024. So
That's what I heard, but is there
Right.
any part of it that covers people who haven't retired by that time?
So no, so those who have, it's not based on the date of retirement, it's based on the date they become a director.
Okay, and that's being recorded, so thank you. My second question is more to the general manager and general counsel, who have told me more than once that changes to eligibility of the retirement ordinance can't be made unless CalPERS, you have to, your ordinance has to say what CalPERS says, and this appears to make some deviations from that. What is the answer to that situation?
So we made changes pursuant to our own
Recording
policies.
stopped. Recording in progress.
Sorry,
Yeah, I'm asking the general counsel or the general manager, please, because they're the ones that have told me that changes to the ordinance can't happen unless CalPERS, unless it's done with CalPERS and it matches CalPERS.
So Lourdes has worked very hard on this, so I'm going to let her answer that question.
Thanks. Yes, so these changes only pertain to us, and they do not pertain to CalPERS. Therefore, we did not need CalPERS's permission or even their input to these changes because we are an independent retirement system, and we
I know
apply
that,
our
but
rules.
for a couple years, I was told that no changes could take place to the retirement ordinance of East Bay Mud that weren't consistent with CalPERS, and that you had to have it exactly like CalPERS. And that was stated over and over again. So I guess I'm finding out that that is not a correct statement.
Thank you, Lana. You've got a response from our staff. We appreciate your question. We've got to move on.
With 20 seconds left, okay.
Do you have another question?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. All right, thank you, Lourdes. So we had a motion
And a second.
by Director Young and a second by Director Gomez.
I just have one comment, just for folks that may be wondering what the heck it is we were just talking about. We're about to take a vote on basically limiting director pension benefits to apply just to their service as directors rather than combining that service, that pension calculation with any other service that they may have undergone, either as employees of East Bay Mud or in other public service.
And that's after our next item. So let's get this.
We have another hand for public comment.
All right.
Just one moment. John C., you should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I just literally signed on because I was in another meeting, so I apologize. And what item are you on?
18.
18, okay, all right, thank you. I was gonna call in on item 20, so I will refrain since I'm not sure what 18 is about. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. All right.
Hold on, I have one more hand. Andrew Datko, your hand is up. Is that by accident, or do you have a comment? Okay, hand is still up. Hand went down. Okay, we're ready.
Okay, we've got a motion by Director Young and a second by Director Gomez. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
For item 18, we have Director Gomez,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Lenny,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President McIntosh.
Yes. All right, that's unanimous. That moves us to item 19, take actions related to the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant Pretreatment Project. And this is a resolution, and it includes 19A, B, C, D, and E. So we have a presentation by our staff, and then we'll follow that with public comment.
And I would just add that the planning committee heard this item this morning and moved to accept the presentation, but not to
Not to
forward a
approve it.
position.
Okay.
Chen Wang is here to provide the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Clifford. Good afternoon, President McIntosh, members of the board.
Good afternoon.
So I'll be talking again about the project, the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant Pretreatment Project, and the release of its final environmental impact report. Here's my agenda, which includes results of the draft EIR analysis and key mitigation measures. The project's purpose and need. So the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant was constructed in 1967 and provides the primary water supply for East Bay Mud's East of Hills service area. The Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant designed its inline filters to treat clear snow melt water from the McCollum watershed and in the Sierras. However, due to climate change and other factors, the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant needs to adapt to changing source water quality, such as high rainfall runoff, high algal growth, and increased risk of wildfire. So you can see in the photos on the left of Pardee Reservoir the effects of warm, heavy rains leading to high turbidities or murky water in the reservoir. We see that same turbid water arriving at the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant filters. So the water treatment plant also needs to be able to treat supplemental supplies from the Freeport Regional Water Facility. You can see the photo at the top right. And the bottom shows recent near-miss wildfires, shown in red, within or around the McCulmy watershed, outlined in blue. We can now expect almost immediate effects on water quality from wildfires in our watershed. These more frequent high turbidity events reduce filtration capacity, they clog the filters, and add taste and odor at the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant. Pretreatment at the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant has been studied for decades, as early as preliminary studies for the Freeport facility in the late 1990s. EBMUD is responsible for ensuring we provide a critical life safety need for the 225,000 customers served by the water treatment plant. So we need to implement a project that we know will work, that considers resiliency, sustainability, and minimizes risk. The Briones Reservoir is the largest of EBMUD's 5 terminal reservoirs, and it is a critical and only local supply for the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant. That, along with Briones Reservoir and Los Vaqueros Reservoir water via the Contra Costa Water District raw water intertie, are important emergency raw water supplies that cannot be reliably treated without pretreatment at the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant. Just very quickly, these are previous Board of Director briefings and staff reports about pretreatment at the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant. In addition to 4 or so discussions of pretreatment at the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant, of the long-term infrastructure investment workshops that have happened in the past, in March of 2021, the Board of Directors authorized a consulting contract for CEQA Professional Services. And then in September of last year, I spoke before the Planning Committee to provide an update for the release of the draft environmental impact report. So here's a site plan, and to orient you, the water treatment plant in Walnut Creek is located west of Highway 60 in the city of Walnut Creek, and this map does show you on the right Alfred Avenue, a local road east of the plant, and Larkey Lane, which ends at the access road to the main entrance of the plant at the bottom right of the map. Near the top left is Quail View Circle, where Quail Ridge HOA neighbors are located. We have received comments from both Larkey Lane and Quail Ridge neighbors that I will discuss later. The thick black line shows the EBMUD property. So this aerial photo shows the existing facilities at the water treatment plant in the background, with the site plan and outline in color to show the new project components, including all of the pre-treatment improvements as well as the new solids handling facilities. The project would be constructed in 2 phases, Phase 1 shown in purple and Phase 2 shown in blue, because it is bifurcated, so one half of the plant can be offline with the other half in service. This does also generally allow operational flexibility and redundancy at the water treatment plant. The proposed buildings were designed so that their architecture would match existing buildings, which generally are a mix of concrete and metal structures. You can see at the bottom left, there's a photo of an existing building at the site. At the top, you can see a rendering of the new proposed solids thickening facilities, the ozone generation building in the middle, as well as the 2-story consolidated maintenance building at the bottom. This slide shows in dark blue along the northwest side the existing East Bay Regional Park District Briones to Mount Diablo Regional Trail. This is the formal trail around the water treatment plant site. You can see also yellow dashed lines. That is the existing social footpath that passes through and around the water treatment plant site. So a social footpath is an unofficial user-created path that's typically generated through community use over time. These are not created or maintained by EBMUD. So during construction, the existing social footpaths would be temporarily closed with appropriate signage for the duration of phases 1 and 2 for public safety. After construction, there will be new security fencing installed around the new facilities, and the social footpaths will be redirected around the new facilities and fencing as close to the existing footpaths as possible. Regarding staging areas for the construction of the project, staff identified a need for staging areas in addition to existing spaces at the water treatment plant. So staging areas 1, 2, and 3, shown at the bottom on the southern side of the access road, will need to be created for the project. There was also a staging area 4. I'll move my cursor so you can see. It's the far right. It is an existing parking lot. It is near the entrance where construction activities have been limited in response to public concerns. Staging area 4 will be used for equipment and material storage only, with only worker parking allowed on the eastern half of the staging area to reduce any disturbance to the adjacent neighbors. East Bay MUD has used this staging area for previous construction projects, and after construction, staging area 4 will return to normal operations, which is emergency and training parking only. As part of the new pretreatment processes at Walnut Creek, there need to be hydraulic modifications at the Lafayette Water Treatment Plant. This is about 3.5 miles downstream of the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant. This is necessary to increase the water pressure within the aqueducts serving the project. So during phase 1, work at the Lafayette Water Treatment Plant will include construction of a new Lafayette Weir number 1, raising the weir at Lafayette number 2, and then demolition of the old weir number 1. There will also be trees planted, shown in green, for visual screening of the new facilities. For the draft EIR analysis, this slide shows the 15 different resource areas analyzed in the draft EIR. You can see that 13 resource areas were found to have less than significant impacts. This was due to aspects of the project itself and implementation of district standard practices and procedures. There are 2 resource areas, noise and transportation, and that require mitigation to reduce their impacts to less than significant. There's also one specific aspect of noise that was determined to be significant and unavoidable. I'll go into that detail on a later slide. As determined from the environmental studies, there will not be any significant impacts from the project on community safety from traffic, air quality, seismic hazards, or hazardous materials, among others. For agency and public outreach, East Bay MUD follows and exceeds the state's CEQA requirements for public outreach and public comment. East Bay MUD staff has presented to the City of Walnut Creek staff and also to the City of Walnut Creek City Council, as well as the City of Lafayette and East Bay Regional Park District staffs, as well as sending certified letters to over 60 agencies. East Bay MUD conducted 2 public community meetings, one in March of 2022 and one in October of last year after release of the draft EIR. The October meeting was held during the 45-day public comment period that ended in November of last year. Staff also did public outreach, as shown on the remaining bullets on this slide, and that did include mailing over 750 postcards to area residents, as well as emails to all the Walnut Creek and City of Lafayette residents registered with East Bay MUD, about 16,000 emails total. So this slide provides some background on the opportunities the community has had to participate in the process. So during the public scoping meeting in March of 2022, we had 22 attendees and received comments at the meeting and formal written comments after the meeting from both Larky Lane and Quail Ridge neighbors at that time. Those comments were incorporated into the development of the draft EIR. During the second public meeting in October of last year, we had 9 attendees and also received comments at that meeting and after formally written comments. Those were 12 letters comprising a total of 65 questions and comments on the draft EIR release. To clarify and respond to the draft EIR comments, staff subsequently held 3 additional follow-up meetings with the Quail Ridge community in November of last year and March and April of this year. And then there were also 4 additional follow-up meetings with the Larky Lane community in December of last year, as well as March, April, and May of this year. The comments we heard from the community included the bullets shown here. They include aesthetics. They include talking about an alternative at the Big Sur site, which I will discuss on the next slide. Comments included staging, noise, air quality, and traffic impacts during construction. There were also comments on chemical safety during operations. Just very briefly, I wanted to note that East Bay MUD follows all local, state, and federal stringent handling, storage, and transport requirements, environmental and workplace health and safety regulations, and fire and building codes for these chemicals, resulting in a low potential of an accidental spill or release. There were also comments on seismic safety. I wanted to note that there's no active fault within the water treatment plant property, and all proposed and existing facilities have been and will be designed to to withstand earthquakes. There was also comments on wildfire risk as well as emergency evacuation. The community has also expressed concerns about not being able to evacuate in the event of an emergency in the neighborhood. However, the project does not propose any road closures or detours and will not affect the existing evacuation condition. In the event of an emergency, Alfred Avenue and other streets provide alternate exit routes to Larkey Lane from the neighborhood. We also heard comments on traffic during operation and maintenance after the project construction, and I'll be discussing that as well on a future slide. All comments that we received are addressed in the final environmental impact report. As I mentioned, one comment we have heard from many neighbors is having East Bay MUD construct the Big Sur alternative instead of the project. The Big Sur alternative would site pre-treatment facilities in the Delta approximately 35 miles upstream of the Walnut Creek water treatment plant. The Big Sur alternative was studied and eliminated in a report of alternatives done in 2018. I'll go over the reasons one by one, but I first want to orient you to the map. You can see the site of the Big Sur alternative in the yellow star, and downstream of it you have the Contra Costa Water District raw water intertie, then you have the Walnut Creek water treatment plant, and then you have the Briones Reservoir. The EIR eliminates the Big Sur alternative because it does not meet water system goals of operational flexibility and resilience. First of all, it does not treat water from the Briones Reservoir. So water pre-treated at Big Sur and stored at Briones will continue to degrade as soon as it enters the natural environment of the local watershed. There have been high turbidities, algal counts, and organics in the reservoir in the past decade. So the water from Briones Reservoir would need to be pre-treated a second time under the Big Sur alternative. The Big Sur alternative also does not treat water from the Contra Costa Water District untreated water intertie, which is not currently used but may provide a critical supply from Los Vaqueros Reservoir in an emergency such as a failure of one or more of the McCollum aqueducts. The Big Sur alternative does not meet water system goals of minimizing future risk. There are McCollum aqueduct concerns with pre-treated water at Big Sur pumped into the McCollum aqueducts at higher pressures, which could cause leaks or breaks in the aqueducts. You can see a photo of McCollum Aqueduct 1 at the bottom, which was constructed in the 1920s. Also, due to the off-site remote location of the Big Sur alternative, it takes up to 17 hours or longer for water treated at Big Sur to arrive at the Walnut Creek water treatment plant. Also, water does continue to degrade in the aqueducts even if or after treatment at Big Sur. If there are also any chemical dosing issues at Big Sur, it could impact Walnut Creek filtration capacity, which would take time to both observe and resolve. The Big Sur alternative does not meet sustainability goals as well. So there's high energy use. So currently the East Bay MUD service area is mostly served by gravity from Pardee Reservoir. The Big Sur alternative requires operating a 30,000 horsepower pumping plant year-round to pump the pre-treated water to Walnut Creek water treatment plant, an extremely high energy use, which does not meet East Bay MUD's indirect emission goals. There's also a high capital cost associated with the Big Sur alternative, which requires sizing it for the full capacity of the McCollum aqueducts, which is not needed at this time. It has a much higher initial cost, exceeding $1 billion, these are fiscal year 2022 dollars, compared to Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant Project Phase 1 and 2 of $420 million fiscal year 2022 dollars. There's also annual operating costs. For Big Sur pretreatment alternative, it would be approximately $11.2 million a year, which is significantly higher than the Walnut Creek pretreatment project Phase 1 and 2 operating costs of about $3.3 million. So this is primarily due to the requirements for continuous pumping and to pre-treat up to the entire McCollum aqueduct flow, which are not needed if pretreatment is located at the Walnut Creek water treatment plant. The project incorporates project measures that apply to all district projects that are laid out in the Project Practices and Procedures Monitoring and Reporting Plan. The Environmental Impact Report also includes a mitigation monitor reporting program that lists the project-specific construction mitigation measures. So long-term operations and maintenance is not significantly different than without the project and therefore do not require their own mitigation measures. Mitigation measure noise 1 requires the installation of temporary sound barriers for the duration of construction. You can see their locations on the slide here. However, in the final EIR, per discussions with neighbors adjacent to staging area 4, this mitigation measure has been revised to only install a sound barrier at staging area 4 if warranted by daily noise monitoring during construction. And the sound barrier itself would be a redwood fence to match neighborhood aesthetics. Also, shrubs will be planted prior to construction between the staging area and neighbors to provide some visual screening of staging area 4 and or the sound barrier if it does end up being needed. So this slide shows in the highlight yellow the haul route for the project along San Luis Road and Larky Lane, ending at the red polygon, which is the East Bay Mud property for the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant. And regarding comments received about traffic during construction, we've explained that the project traffic would not significantly affect wait times. There's a maximum of 5-second delay at study intersections, and trucks would not be allowed to idle, park, or queue on any city streets. Mitigation measures Transportation 1 and Transportation 2 will require the following. It will restrict heavy truck traffic, except for concrete trucks, between 9 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. outside of peak morning and afternoon commute hours. It will require a structural repair of San Luis Road and Larky Lane pavement damaged by the project to pre-project conditions. It will require flaggers during heavy truck traffic periods at Larky Lane and Alvarado Avenue, as well as at Larky Lane and San Luis Road during school start and dismissal times. These mitigation measures will require radar speed feedback signs on both Larky Lane and San Luis Road. Will also require the contractor compliance with written traffic safety requirements, including local speed limits, the haul route, and construction work hours. So we evaluated the comments we received and made the following revisions to the draft EIR. So there are the additional flagger and radar speed feedback signs on San Luis Road, as previously mentioned. There will be training and signage to restrict vehicle idling, loud music, or workers congregating at staging area 4. And as the top right rendering shows, a redwood fence sound barrier at staging area 4, only if warranted by noise monitoring. The rendering also shows the early shrub planting for screening that would be done prior to construction. Also, in response to comments we received, we are planting additional trees on the bottom right site plan. These are shown in light green, and the dark green trees were the ones originally proposed in the draft EIR. These additional trees will be planted after construction to screen the consolidated maintenance and electrical buildings. There will also be an architectural finish applied to the retaining wall around the gravity thickeners for aesthetic considerations. And again, all the comments received are addressed in the final environmental impact report. We've also heard comments about traffic to and from the water treatment plant after construction has been completed. This is during operation and maintenance. And I just wanted to clarify some of the numbers expected after construction. East Bay Mud has been hauling solids and having chemicals delivered for water treatment since 1967 to the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant without any known traffic accidents. So after the project, workers that need to report to the water treatment plant will increase by up to 4 a day to operate and maintain the new facilities. Chemical deliveries will increase from 2 to 4 weekly deliveries. And also to clarify the solids off-haul increases. And these are primarily due to anticipated future higher turbidity and demands. So under historical average demands and relatively low turbidities, the water treatment plant currently requires about 2 trips per day on average to off-haul the thickened solids. Under future higher projected demands and turbidities, this is 73 MGD and less than 1 NTU turbidities, the project would require approximately 3 trips per day on average. The number of trips per day would be even higher without the project. The neighbors have also expressed concerns about the peak operational trip generation of dewatered solids numbers reported in the draft EIR. These are the 21 peak round trips per day number. I wanted to clarify and explain that this peak number of trips was reported in the draft EIR to provide a conservative maximum day trips operating scenario. However, this future peak scenario, the high demand of 73 MGD and an 80 NTU turbidity, has never happened before and would happen only from a catastrophic event, such as a large wildfire followed by a storm event in the McCulmy watershed. If we didn't have the project, we would have similar number of trips, again, but would also require mandatory water rationing in the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant's service area. And despite our efforts to mitigate all noise impacts, there will be a significant and unavoidable noise impact due to required early morning concrete pours along the haul route. These extended hours require a start time, these extended pours require a start time of 6 a.m. to minimize interruptions to concrete pours that could affect the quality of the concrete work and service life of the new facilities. So the noise is significant and unavoidable for the off-site concrete trucks along San Luis Road before 7 a.m. We estimate about 40 days of extended pours during phase 1, which would last 3.5 to 5 years approximately, and 15 days during phase 2, which would last approximately 3 years. Our schedule and next steps include, of course, the board considering the final EIR and project approval today. Design is anticipated to start this year to 2027. Construction of phase 1 begins in 2027, again lasting about 3.5 to 5 years. Construction of phase 2 depends on future untreated water quality and water demands, and is still to be determined. So staff has met multiple times with neighbors and understands the community concerns and have ensured that the final EIR responds to public comments. Staff will make sure the requirements of the EIR are incorporated into the design and contract documents, and will have additional outreach during design and construction. This project would ensure safe drinking water will continue to be delivered to the 225,000 customers served by the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant, doing so in a way that considers resiliency, sustainability, and minimizes risk. Thank you.
Say a few things in terms of questions that, as I reviewed the document, and thank you everybody for putting it together, it's quite a lot of information to absorb. But as I was going along, I was asking questions of staff, and for the most part, the questions that came up for me were being answered. And so I don't have a ton of new questions today, but I just wanted to kind of go over the types of questions that were coming up for me that are similar to the questions that I heard from the community, right? And so, I was wondering if we had analyzed the risks and hazards from a wildfire reaching the facility nearby, and wondering how safe the community would be in the event of an evacuation if there was a fire somewhere else and lots of folks had to be leaving and there's a peak truck day, and how would we handle that? I had questions about mitigations, and specifically, how would we notify the neighbors when the intensive phase of the project will begin, and how would we be enforcing those mitigations, like in the event that a truck driver speeds down the road and a neighbor notices it and documents it, what will happen? And again, all of these questions were answered by staff. But I really, we received so many comments and so many letters ahead of today that I know that we have neighbors here today as well, that I would anticipate will want to make comments. And so before I delve into further thoughts about what I'm thinking of where we might be going, I would love to hear from the community today. But a couple of the other questions that came up for me had to do with, for example, the cost of the Bixler alternative. We actually ended up mentioning two different figures in different parts of the final EIR, and so I wanted us to make sure we're consistent. And I also didn't see a lot of information about what would happen in the event of a very, very poor quality event happening in Walnut Creek, like tomorrow, if we have not done this pretreatment project, and how would it disrupt all of us, 220,000+ people downstream? And my understanding is that, it could disrupt our water supply potentially up to a third for residents for unknown periods of time. So these sorts of things I just wanted to try to explore and have it be perhaps included a little bit further in what I was reading. But again, I think at this point, rather than going into all the other questions that emerged for me, I would just love to have an opportunity to hear the community and then perhaps have some more discussion, if that's okay. And you guys may have some further questions.
I have 5 speaker cards for here in the audience. Are there any online?
We have no hands online for public comment. I would just like to state for the record the emails and documentation that we received over from last Friday to today. We received emails from D. Colombo. We received multiple emails from Jay Jackson. We received an email from Marty Veluva, R. Gigo, Jody Johnson, Layla Ferris, R. Shaw, Robert Ferris, Barbara Doss, Ellie Welsh, M. Bork, Richard Doss, and we also received a letter from Mayor Haskew to the board. And those are the letters, emails, videos, and pictures that the board received over the last few days.
All right.
And they will be filed with the meeting minutes.
Are there any questions before we hear the speakers?
Took care of them in the planning committee this morning.
All right, then let's call the first speaker, Julia Jackson. And Ms. Jackson is followed by Dave Turner.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name's Julia Jackson, and I've lived at the corner of Larky Lane and Alfred Avenue at the entrance to your Walnut Creek facility since 1979. Prior to this meeting, I did provide the district secretary with the emails, documents, and videos, which I trust you've spent time and seen these, about the neighbors of Acalanes Ridge issues with the proposed pretreatment plant in Walnut Creek. Only a few neighbors were aware of this massive pretreatment project back in 2022. It was not until I canvassed our neighborhood did I realize that EBMUD's flood notification process. Most neighbors did not receive the postcards sent in bulk mail, nor received emails or saw the postings on Nextdoor. The few neighbors that had been involved during the DEIR comment period had their concerns consistently ignored by the EBMUD staff. We were without a Ward 2 representative until April 2024, which left us without a voice after John Coleman's retirement. Only after Director Gomez was appointed were we able to actively present our concerns in person about the industrialization of our neighborhood and its related risks. It was only recently that we learned of Jimmy Yoyole's retirement. His replacement is only effective June 17th, which leaves us with little continuity. Our serious concerns about illness, injury, and possible death to residents related to truck traffic, fire, earthquake, pollution, and spills from the increased volume of toxic chemicals stored on a ridge and in transit have been dismissed by EBMUD. These concerns are not to be taken lightly. Keep in mind that the industrial nature of the Walnut Creek treatment plant, as noted in the DEIR Volume 1, is permanent, as well as the associated risks. This is compounded by EBMUD's cumulative project list, with projects through 2035 at this plant which do not require EIR approval, and therefore they're out of the public eye. Walnut Creek's facility on 50 acres of highly unusable space is an inappropriate location for such a massive project. We believe that alternative sites, including Bixler, were not sufficiently explored when other less dangerous options exist. Board, we please ask that you delay the vote on the FEIR approval and ask staff to seriously explore alternatives before taking any action. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Turner, followed by Lance Young. Good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Dave Turner. I was born in Walnut Creek and I've lived there most of my life. The neighbors of Acalanes Ridge believe that the risk of fire in our neighborhood is significant, and as does riskfactor.com. The final EIR does not address the risk of serious illness, injury, or possible death to the residents as a result of fire. The City of Walnut Creek General Plan from 2006 identifies the threat to people from wildland fire at the Walnut Creek water treatment site as very high because of the proximity to wildland areas in the Acalanes Ridge open space. Our neighborhood risk is heightened by the added chemical storage at the Walnut Creek plant. Exit routes are very limited, especially for residents of South Larky Lane, for whom the route is their only option. The dire situation would be compounded by the incoming emergency vehicles using that same route. We believe that there are other options available for the siting of a water treatment plant with less risk to the public. We ask the board representatives to delay the vote on the final EIR and ask staff to seriously explore alternatives before any action is taken. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lance Young, followed by Dell Olson.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
My name's Lance Young, longtime homeowner on Larky Lane. I believe important traffic and safety issues have been minimized in your reports for this project. Over time, the number of workers reporting to Walnut Creek Treatment Plant have increased dramatically. There are now approximately 40 maintenance workers plus operators reporting there daily. Most of them make 2 trips in their personal vehicles and at least 2 trips in their EBMUD truck. This totals about 42,000 trips per year. That's not including the operators. The plant operators add about 15,000 trips per year. For some workers, the number of daily trips is much higher. Employees based elsewhere and deliveries increase these estimates. This newest project includes space for even more maintenance workers, so daily traffic will increase once the project is finished. EBMUD's traffic begins every morning at 7 a.m. weekdays. Despite the district's efforts, when neighbors complain, many workers speed consistently, so safety is an ongoing issue. The roads leading to and from the plant, Larky Lane and San Luis, are rated for only 3 tons. Virtually every EBMUD work truck exceeds significantly the rate every single day. Even heavier semi-trucks transporting corrosive chemicals or sludge use Larky Lane and San Luis multiple times per day. The corner of San Luis and Larky is very narrow. Trucks can't make the turn legally. They restrict traffic flow. Your reports estimate that neighbors will experience only 5-second delay as fully loaded construction vehicles pass. How is that possible? Where in your many reports, there is no consideration for pedestrians. During the 2004 project, a neighbor's dog was killed by a speeding district vehicle. Will the next victim be a child on their way to school, a parent with a stroller, someone walking their dog, or a driver just backing out of their driveway? Most of our homes predate the original water treatment plant. Since it was completed in '67, it has been greatly expanded, yet nothing has been done to improve the traffic or safety on Larky Lane and San Luis Road. I am here today to request postponement until these serious concerns are adequately addressed. Thank you very much for your concern.
Thank you. Dell Olson, followed by our last speaker, Michael Malani. Oh, Dell Olson? Is this Mr. Olson? Mr. Olson. All right, okay. Good afternoon.
Madam President and Board, I have lived for 58 years
on Alfred Avenue, 2 houses up from the entrance to the water filtration plant. We've been neighbors for a long time. And from a half-century perspective, I would like to assure you that the fire, health, and traffic risks in our area from this expansion of the plant are not only real, they are acute. However, I'm here simply to address very briefly the issue of fairness. Is it fair for 140 families in Walnut Creek to bear the onerous burdens cited for this project that benefits all of EBMUD's 1,400,000 customers? At Bixler, the Walnut Creek risks go away, and the only burden that is borne is financial, and that is shared by all of the ratepayers to EBMUD. And that's basically all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker, Michael Milani.
There's one more, but I'm not sure. Arvin,
I don't have a card
did you
for-
submit a card, Arvin?
I did give a card.
Oh, we would need a card. Can you check?
I've checked.
If you haven't done a card, we need a new one. Or if it's gotten-
I have Julia, Dave, Lance. Sorry, there's Arvin. Okay.
Your time is going to show on the screen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, President and board members. My name is Mike Milani. I'm a resident of Walnut Creek. I am on 2159 San Luis Road. I share the same concerns as a number of residents on Alfred Road. I don't live on Alfred or Larkey Lane, but I'm about 800 feet west of that intersection. And I share the same particular concerns. I have some specific comments about the EIR, about the repair on Larkey Lane. They talk about repairing it to pre-development conditions. That road was never designed for that particular traffic load. And when they come back and redo it, they're probably looking at a much higher TI rate. So it's not just paving the road, it's probably digging up and replacing the entire roadway if in fact this project's approved, given the long-term exposure, not just of Larkey, but San Luis all the way up to North Main. Traffic speed is an issue with the turning movements there on Larkey Lane. My house has been hit twice by errant vehicles coming around that corner. I've had 2 vehicles parked in my house rear-ended heading towards Larkey Lane because of traffic speeds. And that's occurred due to the on-ramp years ago when they changed the circulation element and Larkey Lane, San Luis Road became the main entrance onto southbound 680-24. So that's something I think the EIR should take into account, that we have a number of residences, including myself, that walk down San Luis Road at Larkey Lane. There are no sidewalks in that location. The turning movements are horrible, and so is the visibility. So I have some concerns about the pedestrian traffic and the turning movements of EBMUD trucks having to make that left turn going into oncoming traffic the other way. That sighting distance for what I'll call eastbound traffic is horrible. And if they're doing the same speed that they're doing 5 years from now, that they're doing now, unless Walnut Creek puts a motorcycle officer there and keeps them down to 25, I think we'll have an issue at some point in time. So I just want to enter that into the record. Again, construction elements, that roadway, constructing it to pre-development conditions, it's going to be more than that. Safety issues. And one last thing, when they talk about fire, in my location, I'm north of the plant, and I'm insulated. St. Stephen Catholic Church is between my house, and there's an open space element. But my fire insurance policy was canceled in December of this year because of concerns of fire exposure. So it's a real thing. I think the fire concern is something that all should be entered into the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Arvin Malia, our last speaker. I apologize for missing you, sir.
Oh, no, no problem. Understand. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on the EBMUD Walnut Creek water treatment expansion, which is going on, which is planned. I'm Arvind Malia, and I live at 1045 Alfred Avenue. I lived in Walnut Creek for 30 years, electrical engineer, worked in telecom for over 40 years, now retired, currently working with the DoD on a classified project to do with disaster planning and mitigation for man-made and natural disasters. I'll speak on earthquake preparedness and disaster recovery. I'd like to point out two memos, one by Mr. C. Chan here, and one by ex-RIS. I think, I don't know if he's here today, but this is dated April 5, 2018, sent to this board. The C. Chan memo lists the emergency operations plan and the key performance indicators in the strategic plan. It discusses the impact of earthquake or 7 Richter magnitude and resulting extensive damage to the water infrastructure, wherein thousands of pipes and tanks breaking and the lack of personnel available during the disaster. You talk of your employees too, actually, in that memo. Likewise, the RIS memo from its disaster modeling program clearly state that it is a scientifically realistic, with 800 deaths, 16,000 non-fatal injuries, 5,500 tank and pipe breaks, and all the brittle cast iron and asbestos cement pipes breaking. Both these models, the predictive modeling by Arias and yourself here, had no mention of the impact of our neighborhood. No consideration whatsoever to the detrimental safety of the residents from fires, chemical release, and water deluge. The consultants which you hired for this earthquake preparedness have downplayed the seriousness of this concern in the EIR. Regrettably, they have ignored yours and Arias's warnings as to the severity of the damage, disruption, and death resulting from the disaster neighborhood. There is Bixler. There's a Bixler alternative, which is geodiverse for space for expansion, ideal from a reliability perspective, low earthquake disaster impact, and loss of property and life. Once again, you have ignored all our comments which were made to and the couple of meetings we have had with you. I humbly request the board here to vote no on this FEIR and ask the staff to reassess the alternatives. I think that's the right thing to do for the ratepayer, and I'm one of them, and your neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That was our last speaker. I don't know, Luz, do you want to continue with your questions? Or were your questions answered in prior forums?
So, I think I would just like to make a statement about sort of my global assessment of where we're at and all the communications and meetings that I've been
Yeah,
privy to.
I'm sure.
And just share with you all where I'm at with this
Okay.
and make a recommendation.
All
And see where we go with that,
Okay.
if that's okay. So, I've prepared a little statement. So as EBMUD's newest board member, I have had to say that this project has given me an opportunity not only to try to learn vast amounts of information in a very short period of time, but it has also allowed me to meet the impressive Walnut Creek neighbors who have shared their deep concerns about the project with us, as well as your deep love for your neighborhood. I've also come to know and appreciate the staff who have worked so hard on this to bring this proposal before us for many, many years. So while this process has not been easy, I am grateful that we have endeavored to have meaningful engagement with the residents in hopes of achieving mutual understanding. While there are obvious disagreements about the merits of the proposal at its current location, I believe there are a few things we can all agree about. We love and appreciate the clean, good-tasting water that EBMUD provides and would like this same quality to continue into the future. Climate change is changing the quality of the water that we treat more frequently, either because of algal blooms, more severe droughts, atmospheric rivers, or wildfire smoke. The current system of treating water at Walnut Creek could get overwhelmed by the changing quality of our water, leading to potentially significant water restrictions for extended periods of time for over 220,000 people. Something needs to be done about this. There are also several things that we disagree about. Whether or not there was sufficient and timely notification about the project, whether or not Walnut Creek is the best location for the project, whether the project could create undue harm to the neighborhood, be it because of truck traffic, air pollution, earthquakes, noise, fire, or hazardous materials. Residents and Walnut Creek leaders have specifically requested that we delay the certification of this final EIR to allow for more analysis of alternatives and time for review. To be honest, it has been difficult for me to digest all the information presented in this short period of time since I became a board member. And although I have tried my best, I still wish that I had had more time for review. So I am hopeful that with some more time for further engagement with the neighborhood, we can make sure that we have addressed their concerns thoughtfully and thoroughly. As I consider requesting that we delay the vote on the project, I'm not in any way saying that the project can't move forward. I'm just saying I need more time. The community is requesting more time. And I believe EBMUD needs to take a stab at communicating how we will mitigate and ensure the neighborhood's safety. So I would like to make a motion to postpone a vote on the Walnut Creek pretreatment project until July 9th. And I would like to see that staff work with the Walnut Creek City Manager's Office to ensure that our water treatment plant project is considered and evaluated as part of their EOP, or Emergency Operations Plan, which is part of the county's hazard mitigation plan, which is currently in draft form. So with that, that's where I'm at. And I would welcome you guys' thoughts and discussion on the topic.
So I really understand your position. Truly, I do. I think we've all been in your shoes at some point in time. Over the years, I've discovered that there is no more amount of time or conversation that is going to assuage, allay their fears, their concerns. It just won't happen. But I would like to hear from our general manager or our general counsel with regards to any further delay in this. Because I actually believe we have done all we can do at this juncture. I think we've provided the necessary information. I think it's been timely. I think we've tried to address each of their concerns and fears. I don't know what more we can do at this point.
Yeah, maybe let me just start with a few of the issues, and Director Gomez, I really appreciate what you shared. We have met with the neighbors. We do understand that their preference is the Bixler site, and we have met and explained to them and explained to the board why the Bixler site does not address all of our issues. It just doesn't address our issues, and if that were the only option, that would not be the option we would choose. Even if it could address all of the issues compared to Walnut Creek, I don't think it would be the site we would recommend either, because it takes a system that was designed to bring water by gravity from Pardee all the way to our customers. 60% of our customers get entirely by gravity, to make it an entirely pumped system, which would not be something that we would recommend because it creates resiliency risks and costs and greenhouse gas emissions. Even if you could recover some of that energy costs, I don't think, again, it's not a good use of energy at that point in time. So it is not a location that we would consider. And so as we look at the alternatives, there are no other alternative locations for us to look at and evaluate. There are a few other issues that were raised regarding the transportation, traffic issues, and the wildfire risks. I would like to turn to staff and maybe address some of the comments that we just heard. And I don't know if Chen, if you're the right person to address those. As far as and Jen, why don't you come up and just address those specifically? As far as a delay, President McIntosh, I would consider a delay if I think there's an opportunity to, if there was something new that we had learned from the public comment.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting.
I understand that,
Yeah.
and I'm just saying but right now, we haven't heard anything new about this, other than clarifications on certain issues. But I do want, because they brought up some issues that, I haven't heard about with respect to the traffic and the wildfire. Chen, if you can address that very quickly, but, at this point, I would not recommend a delay. Chen, can you?
Chin, do you need the presentation brought back up, or?
No, I can go ahead and speak.
Okay.
Just quickly, I do have follow-up. I heard several issues, so I guess I'll go through them one by one. Please feel free to interrupt me if you need more detail.
Could you speak up?
Oh, sure, yes. Go over here. So first, I guess we can address general chemical storage and transport. I think that was something that was brought up, maybe even as it relates to wildfire risk. So I just want to emphasize that the chemicals that are stored and will be stored at the water treatment plant have been identified, as we all know, from the water treatment industry to provide essential water treatment and public health benefits. So there's a very low potential of an accidental spill or release of these chemicals. With the exception of ozone and ammonia, none of the chemicals will vaporize in the air, and if spilled, would be contained on site. We have recently had a Contra Costa Health Department inspection that has checked all of our double containment and our storage of hazardous materials, and we have passed that inspection due to a customer call to the Contra Costa Health Department. So ozone is a gas, but it's not stored on site. It's generated on demand, and the generator will shut off if a leak is detected. Ammonia is a liquid, but has a potential to get into the air, but it is also in double containment within the chemical building. And there's also a risk assessment for modeling, determining that there's no hazard to the community if it even were to spill on site, unlikely event. East Bay MUD is required to prepare a hazardous materials business plan, which details how hazardous materials are safely managed and supports emergency response in the event of a hazardous materials release. I don't know how much more detail I want to get into, but I just wanted to say that the Contra Costa County Health Services Department issues a permit to operate for the water treatment plant that's renewed annually. In addition, our own regulatory compliance staff conduct an internal wall-to-wall audit every year to ensure that hazards are eliminated and ensure compliance with all safety regulations. And also, the transportation of water treatment plant chemicals is regulated by federal and state hazardous material transportation and vehicle codes. And we have very strict requirements for our delivery drivers and our vendors that ensures compliance with these shipper certifications, license requirements, vehicle safety standards, and other things regarding the transport of chemicals. So if I can touch on another issue just very quickly, I will go to emergency evacuation. I think that has also been brought up. Is that something I can talk about? Basically, again, we have an emergency operations plan for procedures to be followed in the event of natural disasters, storms, system failures, or even terrorist attacks. We have a site-specific emergency response plan, identifying staff and resources during emergencies. It requires immediate emergency notification if something happens at our water treatment plant to the Contra Costa County Health Services Department, California Emergency Management Agency, and the 911 system in the event of a major spill. East Bay MUD itself does not have the authority to directly signal an emergency to the public, and this is why it's the responsibility of the Contra Costa Health Services Hazardous Materials Programs, Incidents Response Team, the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District, and the local Walnut Creek Police Department to issue emergency notifications and evacuation warnings. So just a tiny bit to touch on local evacuation procedures. We have looked into that, of course. The police department does handle the evacuation routes. They communicate messages and enforcement evacuations and would work cooperatively with the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District and the Health Services Department. So there is a warning system in place. People can receive alerts directly via the community warning system website. So there is an ongoing system in place for community notification.
What about the EOP that Director Gomez brought up about a draft form of an EOP by the city of Walnut Creek or the mayor's office?
And the county, yes. So
county.
the county's hazard mitigation plan is currently in draft, and there's like a Walnut Creek annex to it that's currently in draft form. So I just want to make sure that there's communication with the folks putting that together and us.
Right. I mean, we have been working with city staff, And we have reached out to them about their evacuation procedures and the notification procedures, and they have sent us links to the draft documents of that EOP. So since 2022, we have been coordinating with Walnut Creek City staff.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, we have our own emergency operations plan as well, and we do exercises both within the organization and coordinate with other agencies, including OES as far as the coordination. I will also just share, this building is our primary emergency operations center. Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant is actually our alternate emergency operations center, as well as our alternate lab, if the lab by the Bay Bridge is not functioning. And so we've put together a very thorough plan looking at various earthquakes, whether it's on the Hayward Fault or on the Calaveras Fault, to make sure that we can continue our operations, because we do know, as the speaker noted, that there will be many main breaks within the system after a major earthquake, and we have to be able to respond, and that means having many locations, and we have the emergency operations center, but we also have various locations at other treatment plants, other locations where we can run our operations out of. And so this is a plan that's been developed over many, many years, exercised every year as well.
Risha, I see a hand raised.
That's just, that's Rivera.
Oh,
And so
okay.
I'm waiting, and then I'll ask if this comment is on this item or Yvette has her hand raised for another item.
All right, Marguerita's next.
Yeah, I just
And then
have,
Doug.
I have a, if you could address, or I don't know if you're the best person to address, the area or the picture on the front of our slide deck, has quite a lot of open space. As the director that represents Arinda Moraga, I know I've spent a lot of time working with the city, and we have the Moraga-Orinda Fire District, so it's a different, sort of entity focused on, mitigating, wildfire risk. Has there been, or, sort of what's the fuels management, around the treatment plant? Who owns, who's responsible for that open space outside of our footprint? And, sort of what's that coordination? Clearly in a, in a major firestorm, it's, it's coming from, somewhere, but that's not a risk that we generate. It's a risk that we're impacted by. So can you talk about that, or is there somebody else that can talk about it?
I can speak to a specific part of your comment. If you're talking about, we have the 50-acre property that's owned by EBMUD. That's for the water treatment plant. North and south of that, we have property owned and maintained by the city of Walnut Creek. So we have the Acalanes Ridge open space. We also have a City of Walnut Creek Park that's north of the area. And for its own property, the maintenance and the gardeners do manage the property to minimize wildfire risk. So basically, we deploy goats on the Walnut Creek property for weed control and fire safety. We also have removed trees as needed with maintenance staff. And the majority of the low-lying vegetation is mowed or maintained throughout the summer season. The project itself will not increase the risk for wildfire itself, because there's going to be contractor specifications that require the contractor to maintain adequate firefighting equipment on site, properly maintain construction equipment, including spark arresters on their earth-moving and portable equipment. The contractor will be required to maintain defensible space around their work areas, including vegetation management, and they will also be restricted from doing certain activities during periods of high fire danger. So really, the EIR analyzes the potential effects of our project and our construction to start a wildfire. Not vice versa, but we do manage our site for wildfire risk.
Thank you.
Doug?
I wanted to revisit a question that I had this morning, less for my benefit than for the benefit of others here. What I've heard, really a through line with everyone pretty much, was that we need to go back and take a look at the alternatives here that the neighbors aren't satisfied. This is an industrial project. It is in some sense of the form a neighborhood. Anything in an urban area is more or less in someone's neighborhood that way. The Bixler, you've talked significantly about the Bixler alternative. That was one that I heard a lot in the last meeting brought up. Less so here, and it's been kind of a vague, there's got to be another alternative sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit more about what alternatives we have looked at besides Bixler? And what if we went back and said, and actually said, okay, we're going to take a look at the alternatives, what would we do, or where would we go for that?
Sure. There has been an extensive alternatives analysis in the EIR. So as I mentioned in the earlier meeting today, there were 2 off-site alternatives taken a look at. These include Bixler site and a site near the Comanche Reservoir. The Comanche Reservoir was summarily eliminated because it does not treat water coming from the Freeport Emergency Supplemental Supply Facility.
The Freeport facility bypasses the whole Comanche, or
Right. It wouldn't pre-treat water
Right.
coming from the Freeport facility on its way to the aqueducts. If you want to talk about then alternatives also discussed in the EIR were on-site alternatives. This to stagger out the facilities being built on site. The alternative looked at not building the dewatering building. That's part of the solids handling. So that basically removes the dewatering, the 2-story dewatering facility from the project. But that was eliminated itself also because I'll get into a little bit of detail here, but basically currently without the dewatering facilities proposed by pretreatment in this project, we are removing solids from solids handling in the form of kind of a wet sludge to remove those from offsite. With the project's dewatering building, it turns that sludge into a dewatered compacted clay brick. And so that does handle a lot more solids in a more efficient manner. So our project alternative for the on-site alternative, if we remove that dewatering building, we will not have that compaction. We will have an even greater, much greater number than we've reported so far during this presentation of the number of trips during operations. That's after construction. So that alternative was eliminated, that on-site alternative.
So, to the best of our knowledge, there isn't, some hidden magic, if you will, and I don't mean that sarcastically at all, alternative to this. We've established a need to be able to treat this water in a way differently than we've had to historically, but we're absolutely obligated to now in order to continue to supply our clean water that meets all the standards that we need to. So we're kind of stuck that way in my assessment of this all. My thinking on a delay, I'm not particularly optimistic that we're going to find anything else here. As Lisa said, we've all been in this situation one way or another. In the past, in my district, we've had the Bayside project when I first came on the board, and had a lot of hearings, and there always seemed to be more questions and more information to be given. In the end, we were able to come up with a number of mitigation measures, but it also seemed like there was value to having, if you will, respecting our neighbors, giving them the benefit of the doubt, if you will, and taking the time to make sure there's mutual understanding, that their concerns have been heard and satisfied. It's always difficult. There's a long process in getting these things done. We live this all the time. We know it, but neighbors or people who are going through their daily lives are not always aware of these things, even if it's in their backyard, and even if they get postcards and so on and so forth. So I would not be opposed to giving this a little bit more time to have some sort of dialogue, more dialogue with the neighbors. But again, I'm satisfied that this is, that we've done the studies that we need to, but I think maybe some more communication might be helpful.
Marguerite?
I mean, as Doug said, we all have lived with projects in our wards. I'm living with a ginormous project at Orinda. There was a lot of concern and interest and expressed when we were finalizing the environmental documentation for the project. And one thing that I can say is that, we have and we will continue to address neighborhood concerns as the project, as any project goes forward. I think we've probably had more meetings with Orinda neighbors since the environmental documentation has been done. That's anecdotal, but, we've had people in to look at it. We've had, all kinds of sort of adaptive management, if you will, along the way as the, project has gone forward. We also have a major off-haul with a lot of trucks. All of us that were at the Duffel Road solar dedication can attest to how many trucks are going back and forth taking our trench soils out. So I would, I feel like we have exhausted the alternatives as well. I support continued dialogue if that will help, sort of move the process along. Waiting 2 weeks isn't, a big deal to me anyway for a project that is, still really at the early days of development. So I would support Director Gomez's recommendation to, try to address any additional concerns that we can, and maybe lay to rest some of the concerns that have been expressed. But at this point, I would, if we were voting today and there wasn't the recommendation to delay, I would be, supporting finalizing the EIR.
Doug had another.
Yeah, I just had one additional thing. So I have the wastewater treatment plant in my ward, as well as the Bayside project. And in both of those circumstances, the ongoing dialogue, I was reminded by Marguerite's comment there, has continued. We've had the liaison committee in the West Oakland, which has been ongoing the entire 24 years I've been on the board. And the Bayside project, we've had an off-again, on-again project as it, has done, made changes and stuff. We had meetings with the Bayside liaison committee of neighbors and interested people. In fact, we're having a meeting this Thursday evening about that. And that might also be a way to have some sort of group like that meets on an ongoing basis. So it's not just okay, it's, the EIR is approved, we're moving forward, talk to you on the other side sort of thing. But it's something that can be an ongoing dialogue that again, we want to be good neighbors.
Could I add to that? I just wanted to, there is a community affairs representative assigned to the project during the planning phase, and you will continue to be the community affairs representative during design and construction. And there will be ongoing outreach to the neighbors during design and construction as well. That's what we have done for Orinda, like Director Young mentioned.
Okay. Director Gomez.
So thank you all for your wisdom. You've been here a lot longer than I have, and I truly value and appreciate that. And it sounds like, we could probably achieve some level of mutual understanding if we did take a little bit of time and had some more dialogue. I really appreciate your recommendation to try to have some ongoing means of communication with the community so that we can make sure that we're on track and that anything that they notice that is not happening the way we say it's supposed to be happening is addressed. So, I still, and given that, the mayor of Walnut Creek has sent us a letter requesting that we just take a little bit of time and that we continue this dialogue, I think that has some weight that I would like to remind us of. And so I would welcome if anybody would like to second my motion and.
Is
see
your
if
motion
that-
for 2 weeks or further?
So I'm open to recommendations on that. I was first proposing July 9th, but if it seems like that's too long from the planning perspective, then 2 weeks I would be happy with as well.
I mean, whether it's July 9th or June
25th.
25th, I mean, we certainly could delay it to have some continued dialogue, but to be honest, I mean, we're going to be coming back on June 25th or July 9th with the same recommendation. We can commit to having this continued conversation, and even beyond, before the board, takes an action and considers this item, or after, I don't think the outcome is going to be any different as far as staff's recommendation. But if it's helpful to have the conversation, we can commit to it either way.
Bill?
Just one thing that I would call attention to. When we put the treatment plan in years ago, and it was in Walnut Creek, we did have a lot of dialogue. And what we tried to do was mitigate as many of the concerns as possible, which is what we're doing here. And to try and establish some kind of trust in going forward with the project, because if there's no other alternative, then we have to square together to make sure the safety things that have been enumerated, the concerns that have been raised are well addressed. That's what you do if you have a little more time. You take a look at those things, but the perspective can't be, these are things that we can't get by. The perspective has to be, how can we make it work using the best safety methods we can, and we can assure our community that we're not just being shoved through with a project, but a project that is beneficial for you and for all the constituents of East Bay Mud, that will, in fact, have a positive ending for, because we have to continue to improve our service. And if we let some things lay fallow, those very things can come back to cause you the same kind of concerns that you have that are not addressed by just letting it sit. Sitting doesn't solve anything. We must be active all the time. And it's not just Walnut Creek. We're active in all the districts. We have continual planning and renovation and changes that all are pro-changes, changes that are helping the constituency have a better experience with the water. And this agency is sensitive to that. And we go around the corner to make sure we address your issue. It isn't just left fallow. So I wanted just to say that.
All right, so we have a motion from Director Gomez.
I'll second to whatever, the 25th or the 9th.
Well, I guess
We
we
can't go
have to be
beyond that
specific.
because then we have a recess.
I think we have to be specific.
Can you restate your motion for the record, please?
Right. So I would like to make a motion to postpone a vote on the Walnut Creek pretreatment project until July 9th. And I think that the follow-up question regarding working with Walnut Creek and the hazard mitigation plan has been addressed already by staff, so I think it's just a motion to postpone a vote until July 9th.
So to postpone the vote, but I'm assuming you're also recommending that we continue to meet with the homeowners and explain the alternative that we did select.
Yes.
I mean, that's
yes.
the primary reason.
That's the reason.
That's the primary
for-
reason.
To continue to have dialogue with the neighbors.
And we can do that, but just to manage the expectations of the board, I doubt we'll come back with a different recommendation.
I understand.
So the purpose of this is to have understanding of the alternative that we selected.
Well, I do have to say, I do think it's important that we have an open mind, Clifford.
I understand that. I just, we have gone through.
We're going to do the same thing no matter what we hear, or just kind of defeats the purpose.
Well, I say that, Director Laney, only because we have gone through years of analysis, and when you look at all the alternatives, it doesn't address the fundamental issue of us being able to treat the various water supplies. And when you look at our system, there are no other options. And as much as we like to be creative, or maybe there's something magical out there, I just don't. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, but Clifford, I guess, with respect, you and a lot of people in this room have spent years analyzing this project, and we have, neighbors who are smart, invested people, and I think what we're talking about, what I'm hearing, is that there is more to do to find that, seek to understand both what are the critical path issues that are necessary, that make the other alternatives, any other alternatives, not work, right? This one where you reduce the amount of construction, increases tanker traffic for sludge. So there's like, what happens if it doesn't happen here? What happens, what are the, the real, the hurdles that, each alternative considered has to surpass in order to go forward, and how we ended up coming to, this is it, with its warts. It has these warts. Let's try to remove the warts as much as possible, and maybe there are some warts, that we can't remove. What I heard is that a lot of the risks and concerns that, the neighbors have exist everywhere that we live. We live in earthquake country. Everybody, even on this side of the hills, the other side of the hills, the risk of, fire is omnipresent everywhere. So I'm, every water treatment plant that we have has these, chemicals, and as far as, so understanding, have we had any accidents? When we did, what did we learn from them? All of those sorts of things, so that there's a real, if the neighbors are willing to it be in that seek to understand frame, then I think we can be in that seek to understand frame, and work to address or, identify whether there are other mitigations that we can employ. So that's how I think about it. Not that the result is going to be any different, but the path to the result and the process to get to the result increases, hopefully, we're taking a stab at increasing understanding. So that's why I seconded the motion, and I, support going to July 9th.
I see that Andy has
There
his
it
hand
is.
up. Director Katz?
Andy?
Yes, thank you. I think it's been a good discussion. I don't need to repeat much of what's already been said, but I will share that I engaged in significant work with staff in our outreach to the communities in Kensington near the treatment plant that we operate close to the El Cerrito border in Kensington. And many similar concerns were raised, and we did invest a lot in outreach to identify and correct some concerns, but many concerns remained. We do operate essential infrastructure to be able to serve 1.5 million people in the East Bay. And we always strive to do our best in minimizing those those negative effects and mitigating them as much as possible. I think I support the motion to look for more of those things to the extent that they are possible, and additional time to get comfort in the community that we can look for community acceptance for the choice that we have to make. And if new information does come up that helps reweigh this choice, we can reweigh that. We experienced a very significant drought several years ago that we are likely to see again. And that drought it created the most significant perceived water quality issue that we've ever presented to our customers, where we had real taste and odor issues practically district-wide for a long period of time. And that's likely to be a new normal in the face of drought. And that was one of the reasons that prompted the need for for ozone treatment at the Walnut Creek treatment plant, to make sure that we would be able to mitigate taste and odor issues in the event of a new drought. And there's many other reasons that staff have shared why we need to upgrade this treatment plant. So we do need the project, and the alternatives would really involve starting from scratch and impacting another community, should we have to do that, or the challenges associated with Bixler. So it's very hard to see how we could come to a different general alternative. But I believe that when we have meaningful dialogue and discussions with neighbors, that we come up with things that matter at the fence line, come up with things that affect day-to-day life in the neighborhood. And I would feel much better knowing that we gave it everything we had to listen and to try to find those things to make sure that day-to-day life in the neighborhood is as least impactful as possible. So I'm open to, and this is the environmental impact report that sets aside our absolute commitments under the California Environmental Quality Act, but we still have a ways to design. We still have a ways to construction, bidding the project. This is really just the first step. But it is a very important one, and it is the moment where the public has the opportunity to participate, under the CEQA. So that's why I think we should take that relationship with the community very seriously and allow a brief delay to be able to consider some of those issues. Thank you, and thanks for Director Gomez for articulating that interest.
So we have a motion by Director Gomez to continue until July 9th. And we have a second by Director Young. Is there anything further?
And just to clarify, the motion is to postpone the vote on the project final environmental impact report until July 9th, and also for staff to continue dialogue with the neighbors.
Correct.
During that
Continue
time.
dialogue and seek to understand the issues.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Do we need a voice vote?
Roll call.
Roll call. All right.
Okay. Director Gomez?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President McIntosh?
Yes. All right, that's unanimous.
Thank you
All right.
for that
Thank you,
discussion.
Director Gomez, thank you. All right, that moves us to item 20.
Yes, so Derek McDonald will introduce the next item.
And can we talk about the process?
That's pretty much all I'm going to
All
talk
right.
about.
Okay.
General
Well,
Counsel
I mean,
McDonald?
Sometimes it's supposed to be just the process, and it turns into something
Yes,
a
well, and I
little
will try
different.
and steer us towards speaking just about the process. So this matter has been placed on the,
Just,
oh, I'm sorry?
we have one hand online for public comment. We may have two, but just to note, after you speak.
It's on this item.
It is on this item.
Well, then, shouldn't it come after the presentation?
Right, but it's just an oral report. There is no actual presentation.
I'm going to give a short oral presentation. Yeah,
Okay.
and then just to explain why we're here, what we're doing, and then I suppose we can take public comment.
All right.
Good, so this matter's been placed on the agenda at the request of Director Young. Board Ethics Policy 6.04 charges the president of the board with the duty to investigate reported perceived violations of the ethics policy. Director Young requested that then President Katz investigate whether certain statements to staff and board members by former Director John Coleman in relation to his lawsuit against the district violated the ethics policy and related ethics laws. President Katz approved the retention of an independent outside investigator to conduct an investigation. The investigator has completed his work and has prepared a draft report to the board. The draft report is an attorney-client privilege document, and as such, it may not be publicly discussed or shared. Therefore, in order to proceed with any public discussion of this matter, the board will first need to vote to direct the investigator to prepare a non-privileged report of his findings. Under the proposed action on the agenda, if a majority of the board votes to create a public document, it'll be drafted, included in the board packet for presentation and discussion at the June 25th board meeting.
Thank you, Derek. All right, so we have 2 speakers online.
We have one hand at the moment, and
Let's-
John Coleman, you should be able to unmute your mic, and you will see a timer on the screen. Can you unmute your mic? He's probably having issues unmuting the mic.
Do we have?
That's the only speaker that we have.
Yvette?
I have the second hand, yes, so. Yvette Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic. John Coleman, we will come back to you after Yvette Rivera. Give me one moment to set the timer, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. Let me preface my public comments by saying that obviously my comments are my opinion. So I hope no board member comes on after to say that it's just my opinion. It's obvious to me that several board members, general counsel and general manager, want to steer the majority of the board of directors to go along with retaliating against John Coleman by conducting public meetings related to possible ethics violations. You know, there's Penal Code 424, and throughout my time at the district, I've heard about employees possibly violating financial laws at the district, basically stealing. And I've never heard of anybody being publicly flogged after they left. I know that in the Pierce versus EBMUD case, that there were several findings, or there was a report made by Jan Duffy that spelled out how Craig Spencer and Laura Acosta or Laura Brunson used public funds to hire a private attorney. But I didn't hear of any public flogging of that by the board of directors. I only disclosed public documents about it. There have been other instances where I assumed the board of directors would take the helm and publicly go against any violations of district policies and procedures, but I never heard any public flogging of anybody in general counsel's office. I just want to end this by saying that if the district wants to go ahead and move forward with publicizing or publicly disclosing private documents related to possible ethic violations for a district director that is already gone, I think it would be foreshadowing of what could happen to other retiring board members in the future. That's all I have. I yield.
Okay.
All right. Is there another speaker?
There is. John, are you able to unmute your mic? Let me try this one.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Give me one moment.
Thank you very much. President McIntosh, board members and staff, thank you for allowing me to speak. I had not intentionally was not going to call, because I first heard about this today when I looked at the agenda. And one thing when I left East Bay Mud, I held my head high, what I accomplished over 33 years. And right now, it feels more like I'm in a public shaming exercise. And the other thing is, nobody has ever contacted me about the investigation. So how do you do an investigation without talking to the other people involved, in this case, me, in order to write a report that is not biased? It didn't happen. And it's just, you need to have all sides when writing a report. That did not happen. And it's, I don't know what the goal of this is. I know it's been pushed by Director Young. It was stated so by Mr. McDonald and all this. And it's very premature for this to be dealt with in a public venue without first having talked with me. Again, I find that amazing, but maybe I shouldn't after some of the things that have gone on that I've seen in my time at the district. I hold my head high. When I walked out of there in February, that was my intention. I've said nothing ill about the district or people at the district since I left, because I don't believe that's the right thing to do. I also think there's the right thing to do is to talk to all the parties involved. In this case, apparently it's me. And, I followed the rules as I understood them. So I don't know exactly which rules I may have broken, apparently. And again, I don't know what the long-term goal is of this. I'm gone. I have no intention of going back and being on the board of East Bay Mud or any other board for that act side. And it takes a human toll, probably less so on me, but more on my wife, who many of you heard her speak during the trial that was going on. And I just am ashamed. I'm embarrassed. I'm appalled. I don't know which adjective to use. I would just hope that, as Yvette Rivera said, you're opening up a door for other board members. I saw that on item 18, that was clearly directed at me. That's fine. I guess that's a form of retaliation, but it said future directors. I would just hope that you would hold off on doing this until a minimum I'm talked to it by the investigators. Thank you.
Director Katz has his hand up.
Andy?
I will not speak to the contents of the report, but I will, assuming council doesn't interrupt me, speak to the direction that was part of the scope, in that we did direct the investigator to attempt to interview Mr. Coleman, former Director Coleman, and that. And I think I would defer to General Counsel on the report of the investigator about whether, how that was attempted, and certainly, we may be able to report at this time whether that occurred. I think that was what we directed the investigator to do. So I think we should have clarification about that as we're about to discuss, because it is important that any investigation have the opportunity for the subject of the investigation to be able to participate. So in light of the comment that was just made, I would like to request some response from our General Counsel.
So my knowledge of how this investigation was actually conducted comes from the report itself. And unfortunately, because the report is privileged, I can't discuss it.
Right. So
Conundrum.
if I may, as our general counsel indicated, I actually made this request in December prior to former Director Coleman's resignation. And the conundrum is real, because it can't be discussed in public, unless this board determines, to release it, publicly. I had, in December, assumed wrongly that the matter would be addressed promptly and expeditiously. Clearly, we're talking about a report that was provided to us last month, which doesn't meet my test for either of those things. But I do think that it is important, any issue of that questions the ethics or integrity of board members, our public, our constituency has the right, I believe we have the duty to bring that to light. And so I will make a motion that we go ahead with the general counsel's direction that a public report be prepared. I think in the preparation of that public report, former Director Coleman, my understanding was that he was to be, I had nothing to do with what happened between December and April or May, except to ask, what's going on with this issue? But that I was made aware, perhaps we have to figure that out, but I was made aware that former Director Coleman was aware of this issue. So I'm not, the comment obviously needs tracking down, but that be part of the motion as well, that before it's presented, that it be, that our outside investigator speak with Director Coleman, former Director Coleman.
So I'd just make a couple of comments. To be clear, I am not directing the board to vote to have a public report.
No, I'm just saying what you
If you want to
suggest.
speak about it, that's
Right.
what you need to do.
I would like us to discuss it. That means it needs to be public. It needs to be presented in public.
And
So
then if I
that's
may
my
offer,
motion.
to the extent if there are any concerns regarding whether or not Director Coleman was interviewed, I can directly speak with about those concerns with with President McIntosh to determine if more needs to be done prior to the creation of a public report.
I mean, I would think at the very least, he should be a part of the investigation. I mean, really, if he's the subject of the investigation, he should be part of the investigation. How can you do an investigation without that? But also, sort of piggybacking, I just find that I must vote no on this item. I don't find it appropriate for public consumption nor discussion. John is gone. If he were still sitting here on this board, I might find different. But at this juncture, I don't want to see a public version of the private closed session report. I don't want to see that before us here in this forum. So that's my personal vote. So number one, John should be a part of any report, whether it's a closed session report or a public report. And number two, I just feel we need to just move along. I mean, we've spent enough staff time and money over the course of the last year on this, and I just think it's time to move on. Any other comments? Doug?
Yeah, so I think I'm I'm of split mind on this. I'm quite happy that John is no longer here in person. He's here on the phone and elsewhere and everywhere. It did. I'm really bothered by the remarks that this is somehow a public flogging or a retaliation. I think there's such a thing as holding someone accountable to the ethics that we have pledged ourselves to on this board. I think it's problematic that John wasn't part of the investigation. I think it's problematic that he's no longer here. I mean, accountable at this point, you know, to what? I mean, and John, forgive me if I use the analogy here with what we're seeing publicly with Donald Trump right now, because I don't think that you're like that, but I think the situation is similar to, you know, oh, Donald Trump is out of office now, so, you know, why are we, you know, still going after him for any of his many indiscretions that went on there? I just think that there is something of value to the public and to the credibility of an organization and the ethics in this case that we're trying to uphold, that that there is a, you know, an accountability for it. And I think this is challenged because there is the, you know, the what do we want to call it, the confidential version of this, and then there's a public version of this, and I don't know what the difference will be, or you know, an understanding of how that's different. But you know, I do think there's an accountability that should be held on this. So I don't know what that means exactly. Put it over with the Walnut Creek thing for a month.
Some things are criminal, some are not.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. But there's still just a public credibility sort of
Yes,
thing.
Bill.
Yeah, I think I share what you just said. One of the things that needs to be clarified, because it's been vague, because it has been in closed session, is a clarification of this. We almost lost our retirement system. The things that happened during that time, our administrators, you know, even our IG, I'm saying a lot of things happened there that cast things on them that they didn't deserve, in my opinion. And I'm just saying, we ought to clarify it and get it over with. It's too bad that John had to get out of here the way he did, but that was his choice. On the other hand, I do think we have an obligation to look at, did we have a violation? And we have information that leads us to it, and we ought to hear it.
Director Katz.
Thank you. First, I'll say that you know, the scope that I approved while serving as board president did direct for Director Coleman to be interviewed, or at least afforded the opportunity to be interviewed. And the general practice of an investigator is to interview the subject of an investigation and to make multiple attempts to contact that person. So I have no explanation for the discrepancy with that understanding and the comments of former Director Coleman. But I think it is very important to correct that if that's what's being asserted here right now, and to make sure that we have a complete report, and that any report that is released to the public have any information that former Director Coleman would like to present that concerns his reputation. But I share many of the sentiments that have been expressed so far, that when we have a complaint that has merit for investigation under the ethics policy, that the president must investigate that. That's our policy as a district. When we do an investigation and have important findings that should be shared with the board or with the public, we should take the appropriate steps to demonstrate that violations of the ethics policy have accountability consequences, and those come in various forms depending on the facts and the nature of those issues and the severity. And I'm not speaking to a specific degree because, frankly, I'm not sure if the investigation is complete or ongoing at this time, given what we've heard. But in any event, I do feel like we, as a district, have moved on, and I'm very glad to see that we have completed the process for filling the vacancy. Very we welcome Director Gomez joining the board, and that we have moved on from the issues that were very concerning in the last year. And what but I do feel like part of moving on does mean having an open story, with the public about what has happened, because so much of what occurred was brought out in public. I don't know if that would be my assessment in all cases, but we had meeting after meeting where the subject matter that concerns all of these facts and circumstances was brought out in public, and that was not necessarily the way it needed to go, but it was it's what happened. I do feel like there have been instances where a very complex and confusing story was brought out in public that doesn't tell the full story, and there were instances where I think there were public comments made that had effects on staff morale, and I think that those are factors that weigh in favor of a public version of the report. But I don't feel like we need to belabor the subject with the board discussion, because again, we're moving on, and I would be open to scheduling another discussion if board members look at a public report, consider this with the public on their outside of a board meeting, and then if it's on the agenda, that's up to the board and the president. But my inclination is to have a version of the report that exists for the public, but I do not have a strong inclination to take up the report as a board.
So are you making a substitute motion? Because we don't have a second on the motion that I made. I mean, Madam President, we don't
I'm
have
not even clear.
We haven't heard
Andy's
from all
motion.
members of the board, so I'm expressing my view, and I think we should deliberate and let all board members who want to speak. So I'm not in the room, so I can't see what is the nonverbal cues, but I'm expressing my view, and I've completed my
Andy,
discussion.
I don't disagree with the need for everybody to have their say, but we had, I mean, if the motion, usually you make a motion, it gets seconded, and then there's discussion, or a substitute motion, or what have you. I'm not.
I would support a substitute motion. Can I make a substitute motion? I guess I can, right? If Andy's not ready to, I will make a substitute motion along the lines that Andy was just suggesting, that we have a public version of the report, and whether we take it up as a board or not can be decided at a future time if someone wants to put it on the board agenda.
a public version of the report in its entirety? I mean-
Yes, and, but again, I'm also sensitive to having John.
Well, yeah,
I think
okay.
we've all agreed that he has to be part of that.
So if I understand your motion, it's to move to have the investigator get in touch with and interview John, and then create a public-facing report on the investigator's findings, which will then be made a public document, and you will decide at the next board meeting after the report is prepared whether or not to have a discussion of that report.
Right.
Well, of course, there will be a discussion of that report if it's on,
Doesn't need-
will it be on our agenda?
Can
Well,
just
if
be on,
we
for
put it on the
information
agenda,
without
yeah.
discussion.
Yeah,
Be in an information memo.
Bill seconded that.
Can we just I want to make sure we have, Derek, I want to make sure we have it. You said there's a motion to interview John Coleman.
To
and
have the
then-
independent investigator reach out and interview John Coleman.
Uh-huh.
Include that information in a public-facing report, which will be a public document. And then
And is not necessarily tied to a.
to a board
board
item.
agenda.
And then if the board wants, so that would be a public document, and then if the board, then the board would vote to agendize discussion on the report or not.
They have the option.
Is it,
How would this report reach the public?
It would just be provided to you as an info memo, a non-privileged info memo, and it would be available as a public records, a public record. And I'm presuming there will be requests for it.
And info memos are shared with the employees,
All employees,
all employees.
all board members.
and just to play devil's advocate, once it's in the public domain, if the subject of the investigation wants to say or do anything about it, they would have to make a public comment outside of the agenda on a non-agenda item in order to raise any concern or,
Unless discussion of the report is an agendized item, they'd have to make public comment during the public comment period.
Andy, was that near your motion?
Agenda.
It is near my motion. I would also, stress that, the facts and views of the subject of the investigation, should be also expressed in the investigator's report, because the investigator is interviewing that person, and independent assessment of those facts would be presented and analyzed as well. So that's not a substitute for the subject of the investigation having his own views expressed in his own words, but there are other witnesses, there's other documentary evidence that would be described in the report. It is an independent investigation report. So, but to get back to the sense that I expressed and how it's translated into the motion here, and there's multiple views on this, but my view was inclined not to have it on the agenda, but very clearly to have it exist as a public record because of the reasons I balanced, the factors I balanced earlier. But if there is enough knowledge of the report right now for board members to presuppose that we do want to still have that item discussed, we might as well just schedule it if that's where the majority is right now, because I'm not sure if the report will I think we have enough information now to judge what information has come forward. My inclination was to let the report speak for itself, and not to take up this board's time with discussing it, because I believe the report will express the facts and will not require a further discussion. But I'm open to what my colleagues would like to do.
Any other discussion? We have a motion.
I'll withdraw my initial motion.
Okay. So the current motion is Doug. Is it you?
Yes, I made it.
He made a substitute motion. I'm
Okay.
withdrawing my motion.
Okay.
And Bill seconded.
And who seconded?
Bill.
Okay. So we want to repeat the motion?
I
No,
knew
I
she'd
don't.
ask.
We, so
Read an info memo.
direct the outside investigator to interview John Coleman and prepare a public-facing report that includes that information from the investigation. And the board will have the option to agendize this item for discussion at a later date.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay?
Thank you. Somebody's paying attention here.
Ready for a roll call vote?
That's a motion and a second.
Director Katz, you still have your hand up. Yeah.
Excuse me?
Okay. Director Gomez?
Abstain.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President McIntosh?
No. All right, we have our marching orders. If there's nothing further on this item,
Derek, anything else?
that moves us to general manager's report.
Okay, attached is the monthly report, and at your places is the Speakers Bureau. One correction I just want to note for July 4th, the Arinda 4th of July Parade, it did note that Director Young will be in attendance, so we'll add that to the Speakers Bureau.
All right, the minutes from the May 28, 2024 Finance Administration Committee meeting were included in your agenda materials. We will now receive a report, an update from this morning's Planning Committee, and the Ledge Human Resources Committee meeting was covered on this agenda, so there's no further report on that committee. So planning?
Yeah, planning committee met this morning. We had two items. Amendments to the wastewater control ordinance, which basically were conforming amendments to deal with various toxic substances as well as fats, oil, and grease. That was adopted, and I guess it will be first reading at our next.
July.
Oh, okay, first reading at our July meeting, and then adopted or second reading would presumably be in August. And then the second item was the Walnut Creek treatment plant, which we covered in our main session.
President McIntosh, just as far as the Legislative Human Resources Committee meeting, I do want to say that we discussed the board governance policies, and as directed by the committee, we're going to prepare an info memo to the entire board to provide feedback on the governance policies by the end of this month for discussion to bring a draft to the board in July.
And that was not from this morning's committee, that was from this full board, correct?
No, that was a committee discussion.
Okay. Almost like I wasn't there.
But you were.
All right, other items for future consideration, please submit to the general manager's office. Thank you, directors, if you've already submitted your written comments to the secretary. Are there any verbal comments? All right.
Was Duffel was between now and then, right? Wasn't it?
No?
Yeah. Yeah, so a number of us were at the Duffel photovoltaic dedication. And it's an impressive solar array. But also, just a chance to be out in our watershed and see what we're doing to address climate change and was a beautiful day.
All right.
I have one quick one. You reminded me. I attended the mayor's conference meeting where I highlighted the PV project for the leaders of the county, so.
Wonderful. And Bill?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the voltaic. I think the amount of publicity and whatnot that went out about that was astronomical. It would have kept building, except that wildfire came in and it backed up some of the gravitation of what was coming out, because in many instances, we have agencies, well, I can't use PG&E as an example. This is an example of with less cost for the energy, they're gonna make your bill bigger. Our situation is we have options that bring in to the equation an opportunity to keep our rate low, to keep it down. And people were getting educated to that. I got a lot of calls on that from some of my friends who are looking at other things that are going on in terms of the experiences of people today with all the add-ons and the fact that, you know, you can't get by with the same money you made last year because the costs are going to be up. And people need to get ready for this. And there's a lot of education that needs to go in around that. And there's a lot of, it's going to get on the political scene, but it's got to get on the scene of helping people financially literate and understanding how to plan the financial, because if you don't have that in your equation, your everyday living is going against you. And that's what the subject that several of us in the community had been looking at, and it just came out, and EBMUD just jumped in the scene based on what happened, and it was just, a lot of folks were saying, Bill, you guys are doing some good things over there, and they took away from you by having the wildfire, but keep doing the good things. That's the common language that people use out in the communities, you see. And Clifford, I think I just wanted to emphasize, you guys are doing good things. The staff, I've always given this staff a lot of credit. You see, you make things happen. You take us to another level. No other public agency around here can get into that arena. You're in an arena by yourself, believe it or not. And it's just not me talking. It's the people I see out there are becoming more and more aware. And our water problems are for everybody. You can't get up in the morning without water. You can't do anything without water. So we're essential. That's what I'm trying to say. And we're the best.
Thank you, Bill.
I have something quick. One question, two things. One, are we hooked up yet with PG&E?
Not yet.
Not yet. Could we know when it is, just for purposes of kind of knowing how long these things take?
The whole entire board now.
That'd be great.
We hope that our publicity would have goosed
Put a little
them, but
pressure
it
on
didn't.
Yeah, right. And the second thing is, judging from how dapper Bill looks today, I might start wearing bow ties.
Listen, this was not my plan. it happened that the board meeting and Don Godbowl ceremony out at Allen Temple came on the same day, and we were fraternity brothers as well. And so
You all wore bow ties?
we were on program. All of us had bow ties on, and we spoke. We gave him the Omega ceremony. That's in the fraternity. That's your last time. Omega is when you're out of here. But we dress for the occasion, and we see our people through the end, you know.
Well, we're going to adjourn today's meeting in honor of Dr. Donald Godbowl,
Yes.
former Chancellor of the Peralta Community College District and former President of Merritt College. Director Patterson will now provide remarks.
Yes, and I'm going to slim this down a little bit to say Don Godbowl, of course, we're honoring as a trailblazing educator who dedicated his career to the community colleges and to whom we had a lasting impact on the East Bay. Today, Laney College was on display that we have a contract with and are working with. And you heard the expression of the young people, of the people who were involved in that. And that's why we were given the best to what EBMUD has connected with to expand the horizon of our workers, you know, and the D&I program that we have. Don Godbowl was born in Detroit, Michigan. He earned his bachelor's degree in education from Wayne State University in Detroit. After 2 years in the Army during the Korean War, he received his doctorate in educational counseling from the University of Michigan. Dr. Godbow's career was a history of firsts. He was the first African-American administrator at Orchid Ridge College in Michigan. Later became the first Black college CEO of a suburban community college in the Oakland Community College District. After serving at several community college posts in Denver, Dr. Godbowl came to Oakland in 1973 to serve as president of Merritt College, one of 5 colleges in the Peralta Community College District. He was promoted to vice chancellor of the college district in 1997, and in 1980 was named chancellor of the Peralta Community College District, making him the first African-American chancellor of an urban multi-college community college district. Dr. Godbowl served as chancellor of the Peralta Community College District for 8 years. Dr. Godbow's commitment to community colleges transformed the way the system serves the East Bay. When Dr. Godbowl left Peralta Community College, and this is what I want to say, that it was a little controversy, you know. It wasn't easy for a person of color back then to assume the top posts. And there were a lot of things that came after him. I had the privilege of befriending him, and he and his wife were good people in our household with Dell. And so many of the things that he was really coping with on a day-to-day basis, I had a chance to play the role of being the friend that he could trust and could give him some advice. I was kind of riding high in the civil rights area, and so a lot of people didn't want to run afoul of us. NAACP was big time back then. And I had reached out for the Oakland Black Caucus, in which I brought all the organizations under one heading so that they could strike at any minute, knock down a door, but the agency, whether it be NAACP, Black Women Organized for Political Action, whatever group in the caucus had center stage, then took charge, and they would go inside and do their work. So we weren't expending that power back and forth in one organization. It was vested in the members of the organization and their strength. And so with all the things that were going on at County Board of Supervisors all over the place, it was important to understand that Peralta, and I was on the organizing committee for the start of Peralta. I did the sites committee for where all the camp are located, Merritt, Laney, all of them, we fit into the equation. And so from the other side of it, being able to advise him and help keep him straight in the head, because he set the organization that is now the infrastructure of Peralta. That's what he did while he was in the chancellor role. And Peralta's board did some stupid financial things, and I can say that because we're so strong in the financial end. And I was able to help him understand that a faction of the board was working against him. They voted to do 2% less than any other community college district in California. That was their budget. It was going to be 2% lower than the lowest one. And on that little money, you can't keep up with everything. So when things fell apart at the state level, and the state stopped giving money to high schools and community colleges and whatnot, they were also under the hammer for not having enough income. And so the rise to that was student population. The curriculum and what he put in place drew students, and they were going to school at night and all kind of times. So despite the fact that they were getting less money per student, they were getting a larger number of students coming out. And that's what he left it with, because it was uplifting and it's still active. I caught him at the end because people were trying to hurt him with his retirement, some of the subjects that we've been talking about today. And so his wife said, other people were running around, but you gave him a job. Well, that's what this report says. Godbold, when he left Peralta, became executive director of the local nonprofit, Alameda County Youth Development, Inc., the Scotland Youth and Family Center. And I was president of the board over there. And he stayed there for 10 years. And his wife said, everybody else is doing all these good things, but you put food on the table because you gave him a job. And you see, while he struggled with the other, he had a place for income. I want to just end by saying, taking time out today ran me through a whole lot of history, a whole lot of makeup in this town. And what Lionel Wilson always said, And Henry Gardner, who's still here out at the Coliseum now, it was city manager, and he said, Bill, he said, we got a lot of managers, we give them money and they do this, that, and the other, and whatnot. He said, but you never went over your budget. You always drew money in and you fixed things. And I left everything better than I found it. And even Peralta, in that vein, the same thing. While at Allen Temple today, I saw my picture up on the wall with Allen Temple's ministers and whatnot. The community. Love it. I just want to end by saying we close the meeting today. EBMUD Board of Directors, in honor of Godbowl, my friend.
God bless, Bill.
This is Richard.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. The next meeting of the Board of Directors will be held Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 at 1:15 p.m. The meeting is now adjourned in honor of Dr. Donald Godbowl.